Chapter 34:22. Yi Shiwen quickly stabilized his figure in midair. This spear attack had caused the blood in his entire body to surge. It was indeed as Hierarch Skyfire had said. He was only relying on the mysteriousness of the universe creation palm to resist it. But even so, the gap brought about by the skill still caused the blood in his entire body to surge. Hierarch Skyfire was indeed terrifying. He was worthy of being a high-level expert. If he was facing an ordinary peak of the Third Realm, Yi Shiwen would not be at a disadvantage without using the universe creation palm. With the universe creation palm, he would be able to gain the upper hand and even suppress the opponent. It would not be so strenuous for him to face an ordinary Fourth Realm expert. He was even more terrifying than an ordinary Fourth Realm expert. This was the terror of a veteran Heavenly Lord. Whether it was accumulation or realm comprehension, he was above Yi Shiwen. Under normal circumstances, I would be defeated, as you said. But do you really think that I did not prepare anything? Yi Shiwen smiled coldly. He flipped his palm, and a world tree fruit appeared in his hand. This world tree fruit was sparkling and translucent. It carried the brilliance of endless principles. Then, he swallowed it all at once. Hierarch Skyfire also saw it, but he did not take it to heart. He just said coldly, "It's useless for you to eat now. Even if you make some progress in your skill in a short period of time, it will be useless. You will definitely die in this battle." He wanted to kill an Emperor Lord. Before he made his move, he had already prepared for it. It would not be easy to complete it, but his determination to kill Yi Shiwen had become even firmer. If such a person was not dealt with as soon as possible, the consequences would be even more unimaginable. Hee. Yi Shiwen smiled faintly. He only felt a majestic power immediately spreading into his limbs and bones. His martial power was steadily improving. Along with the improvement of his martial power, his comprehension of the Great Way was also increasing. Many law insights suddenly surged into his mind. This world tree fruit originally contained many law insight. In Yi Shiwen's body, his mysterious space was operating rapidly, helping Yi Shiwen to comprehend. Therefore, Yi Shiwen could achieve an almost seamless connection. Wherever he absorbed, he would comprehend. At this time, he was like a volcano that was about to erupt. He was trying his best to suppress everything. However, once it erupted, the power would be unimaginable. Boom! Hierarch Skyfire made his move once again. He raised his aura once again and was about to completely merge with the world. The fire laws emitted from his body seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth apart. It was as if the sun and moon in the entire galaxy would be changed. In the distance, many people were trembling, especially the emperors who were watching this battle. Although they kept telling themselves that celestial venerables were just stronger cultivators, when they truly felt the terror of divine venerate Skyfire, they could not help but tremble uncontrollably. That was the suppression of a completely different level of life. It's too terrifying. There's definitely a reason why Hierarch Skyfire could remain invincible for so many years. Many people felt their hair stand on end. Yi Shiwen also shouted loudly. His heterogeneous great Tao was like an ocean that could accommodate everything. No matter what kind of attack fell into his ocean, it was useless. He stepped on a large array under his feet. Countless speed laws were engraved on it. These speed laws emerged one by one and manifested, turning into this large array. In an instant, Yi Shiwen's speed was raised to the peak. He stepped on these great Tao traces under his feet and met it with a palm of his own. Boom! Both sides collided in an astonishing manner. The raging waves of divine power spread everywhere. Everywhere it passed, there was a huge collapse. The sky was torn apart, and it was like breaking dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Fortunately, there were no living creatures in the depths of the galaxy. Otherwise, the power of these two people's attacks would be too astonishing. It was enough to completely destroy them. Worlds would be destroyed by the battle between these two people. At this moment, Hierarch Skyfire had fused with the heavenly Tao. It was as though his body had turned into a legendary furnace that wrapped the entire heaven and earth within it. It was as though he was trying to refine the entire heaven and earth. His surroundings were filled with terrifying, incomparably blazing divine flames that were burning furiously. Anything that came near would be refined. This divine furnace that manifested directly engulfed Yi Shiwen. The dark red spear continued to attack, almost piercing the world and tearing it apart. It seemed that Yi Shiwen was already in imminent danger. Hierarch Skyfire, who was going all out, was indeed terrifying to the extreme. Sure enough, after all, Wu Zun's time to achieve the Great Tao is too short. In this aspect, he is completely at a disadvantage. Is the veteran Celestial Lord really so terrifying? Even Wu Zun, who was able to kill Celestial Lords in the Emperor era, can't resist? He will be engulfed soon. I can't sense Wu Zun's aura anymore. Everyone immediately started discussing. Looking at the scene, Hierarch Skyfire, whose aura had increased by another level, had completely gained the upper hand. He originally only had a slight upper hand, but now he was completely crushing Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's defeat was already certain. But at this moment, the body of Hierarch Skyfire, who had already manifested a divine furnace, moved slightly. Then, his flame divine furnace that covered the sky suddenly shattered. Then, everyone only saw a fist instantly penetrate everything, blasting away the divine furnace that covered the sky. Then, they only saw Yi Shiwen take a step forward. His body burst out with light that covered the sky, blazing like a blazing sun. He crossed the sky and directly counterattacked Hierarch Skyfire. He actually still has the ability to fight back. This shocked many people. In their opinion, Yi Shiwen should not have the strength to fight back. After all, the power of Hierarch Skyfire was too overwhelming. It's the fruit that he ate just now. It really can greatly improve his power. Many people opened their eyes wide. They wanted to recall what Yi Shiwen had swallowed earlier. It was undoubtedly a rare heavenly treasure that could make a heavenly master's martial power increase by leaps and bounds. They would naturally be able to greatly enhance their strength if they could obtain it by chance. And this was what they wanted the most. Yi Shiwen was like a god bathed in flames. He was the only ruler walking between heaven and earth. Everyone was stunned by his performance. There was absolute silence. Whether it was a celestial lord or an emperor, they seemed to be frightened at this moment. Hierarch Skyfire retreated again and again. Yi Shiwen's counterattack had directly broken his encirclement and made his encirclement disappear like a bubble. His face showed a somewhat dignified expression. Although he guessed that the fruit that Yi Shiwen swallowed would inevitably increase his strength, in his opinion, it would only improve his strength in a short period of time. This kind of thing that could improve the strength of a celestial lord in a short period of time was rare, but it was not non-existent. However, Yi Shiwen's strength improvement was slightly exaggerated. He actually broke his encirclement and encirclement in an instant. His momentum had increased by a notch, but he still could not suppress Yi Shiwen. It could be seen that the fruit that Yi Shiwen swallowed just now was useful. However, his face quickly regained its calmness. After all, relying on external forces could not last long. After breaking the encirclement and encirclement of Hierarch Skyfire that had transformed into a divine furnace, Yi Shiwen did not stop at all. He was also not interested in finding out what Hierarch Skyfire was thinking. In an instant, he slammed his palm towards Hierarch Skyfire. Boom! An incomparably loud roar sounded. The palm directly landed on Hierarch Skyfire's body. Hierarch Skyfire's body suddenly erupted with endless blazing light, blocking Yi Shiwen's palm. However, such a confrontation only lasted for a moment. In an instant, the light that erupted from Hierarch Skyfire's body could not stop Yi Shiwen. He was directly slammed by Yi Shiwen's palm. Bang! Hierarch Skyfire retreated continuously. His body could not help but shake. His blood was constantly surging. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood essence. How is this possible? A look of disbelief finally flashed across his face. This was because he could clearly feel that Yi Shiwen's palm had clearly improved a bit. That was why he was caught off guard and was directly slapped. If it were not for his profound cultivation, he would have been exposed with just this palm and suffered a great loss. This was an improvement on the foundation that Yi Shiwen had already improved. This was the reason why he was surprised. Could it be that the fruit's improvement had not reached its limit? However, without waiting for him to think too much, Yi Shiwen's next wave of attack arrived in an instant and hit his body all at once. He quickly began to counterattack. He opened up all kinds of flame anomalies, disintegrating heaven and earth. He swept out the laws in the void to resist Yi Shiwen. However, the more he resisted, the more shocked he became. Heavenly Master-level experts had to fight hundreds or thousands of times in an instant. Because of this, he could clearly feel Yi Shiwen's growth. This kind of growth was very amazing because he could feel Yi Shiwen's growth every time they fought. After fighting a few times, he could feel that Yi Shiwen had a significant improvement. This was the most terrifying thing. Heavenly Masters were tyrannical. Their skills were like the boundless starry sky. It was also because of this that all cultivation was extremely difficult. Every step forward required a lot of resources and a lot of time. It was simply impossible for Yi Shiwen to have a big breakthrough in such a short period of time. If he had broken through to a new realm, then his strength would have increased by several times. It was completely different from the current situation. How is this possible? What is that fruit? How can it have such an amazing effect? Said Hierarch Skyfire quickly at this time. You only noticed it now? But it's too late. Yi Shiwen laughed loudly. His aura swallowed the mountains and rivers like a god. Chapter 34-23. Yi Shiwen laughed heartily. His aura was magnificent. At this time, he had already unleashed his aura and gained the upper hand. With the mysterious space, he could almost receive the power and law comprehension of the world tree fruit at the same time. He didn't need to spend time to comprehend it. Therefore, his strength improved very quickly. Every time they fought, Divine Lord Skyfire could feel the improvement of Yi Shiwen's strength. Similarly, Yi Shiwen could also clearly feel the improvement of his own strength. There was no doubt about it. This kind of battle was simply too carefree. Every time the surging qi and blood washed his physical body, it made his physical body more tyrannical, and his skills improved further. Such a transformation happened almost every minute and every second because every minute and every second was digesting the power of the world tree fruit, and then transforming it to enhance his own strength. If it was said that Divine Lord Skyfire had the upper hand in the beginning, then as time gradually passed, Yi Shiwen had gradually changed from being at a complete disadvantage to gradually becoming evenly matched. Every collision was a time to verify the Tao for him. It had been a long time since he had felt such a hearty battle. How could he not feel good? This Wu Zun is gradually gaining a balance. Everyone was not a fool. They quickly realized that Yi Shiwen was gradually gaining a balance. It was not like at the beginning where he was almost suppressed. Everyone quickly realized that it should be the effect of the fruit. It was just that the fruit had such an effect which surprised everyone. However, many people had thought for a long time, but in the end, they still couldn't figure out what the fruit was. Even many experienced and knowledgeable celestial venerables didn't know, let alone those sovereign emperors. They were only guessing and comparing it with the heavenly treasures they knew, but they still couldn't figure out what it was. However, gradually, they noticed that something was wrong. Yi Shiwen's strength was gradually increasing, but he didn't show any signs of weakness. The qi and blood in his body were endless and constantly increasing. This didn't feel like a forceful increase in strength in a short period of time. On the contrary, every point of strength increase was done steadily and surely. Although the speed was fast, this degree of stability was unmistakable. While they were in shock, the entire situation had completely changed. In the beginning, Divine Venerable Skyfire took the initiative to attack more. However, it gradually became Yi Shiwen's turn to take the initiative to attack. Moreover, the World Tree fruit in his body was providing rich and majestic energy. Hence, he was more willing to attack. Every time he attacked, he felt that he had greatly improved. The more he fought, the smoother it became, and the stronger he became. Such a feeling was unmistakable. Damn it! Why is it like this? Hierarch Skyfire quickly felt this disparity and change. In the current balance of power, Yi Shiwen had firmly occupied the upper hand. He had completely suppressed Hierarch Skyfire's martial power. No matter how Hierarch Skyfire resisted, it was useless. He couldn't break free from Yi Shiwen's suppression. No matter what kind of move he used to attack, Yi Shiwen was very straightforward. It was just a simple move of the Universe Creation Palm, and it directly smashed his attack into pieces. Although Yi Shiwen didn't burn the dragon vein in his body, the huge power of the Universe Creation Palm was completely displayed in a situation where his martial power wasn't bad. It helped Yi Shiwen suppress Hierarch Skyfire. This made Hierarch Skyfire, who originally thought that he could kill Yi Shiwen, stunned. If this went on, it would be good enough if Yi Shiwen didn't kill him, let alone kill Yi Shiwen. However, from the looks of it, Yi Shiwen's performance was too strong. The growth of his martial power was almost as if there was no bottleneck. It was growing crazily. Originally, Yi Shiwen wasn't inferior to the ordinary peak of the Third Realm. However, his own martial power was several times that of the ordinary peak of the Third Realm. Not to mention the advantage brought by the realm. Therefore, even after knowing that Yi Shiwen had also entered the Third Realm, he didn't panic. However, Yi Shiwen's martial power had increased crazily. In a short period of time, he was almost the same as him. Moreover, with the help of the Universe Creation Palm, Hierarch Skyfire was gradually suppressing him. If this went on, he would really suffer a huge loss. However, it wasn't that easy to break free from Yi Shiwen's attack. Yi Shiwen was like a maggot in one's bones. Once he was entangled, it was difficult to get rid of him. Yi Shiwen wouldn't give him such a chance. As time passed, Hierarch Skyfire was anxious. As time passed, Yi Shiwen's strength gradually manifested. It didn't appear as Hierarch Skyfire had initially expected. After the effect period, Yi Shiwen would quickly weaken. Instead, he became more and more powerful. His chi and blood rushed through his body, making a thunderous sound. His aura swallowed the galaxy and was extremely terrifying. At this moment, even a blind person could see that Yi Shiwen definitely didn't take any medicine that could increase his strength in a short period of time. On the contrary, it could really increase his strength and foundation. Although Hierarch Skyfire didn't know where Yi Shiwen got it from, it was obviously not a problem anymore. Or rather, it wasn't the most important problem anymore. Finally, Yi Shiwen's aura reached a peak. His movements were even faster than one could imagine. In an instant, he had already rushed in front of Hierarch Skyfire and directly tore apart all of his defenses. Bang! Yi Shiwen's palm fell and directly hit Hierarch Skyfire's chest. Puff! This time, after being hit, Hierarch Skyfire didn't just have his chi and blood raging. He spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. His blood essence splattered out like sharp arrows, piercing through the galaxy and destroying the stars. His entire body also flew backward like a meteor. He cut through the galaxy and flew for tens of thousands of miles in the sky before barely stopping. At this moment, Hierarch Skyfire finally managed to escape from Yi Shiwen's attack range. Blood flowed down from the corner of his mouth. He felt that his internal organs had been shaken by this palm strike, But what shocked him even more was the rapid growth of Yi Shiwen's strength. After his martial power had almost reached the same level as his own, not only did it not stop, but on the contrary, it directly surpassed him in one fell swoop. This palm strike was more terrifying than any of his previous palm strikes, and Yi Shiwen hadn't reached his limit yet. This was the most terrifying part. If this continued, it would be terrible. Yi Shiwen didn't take advantage of his victory to pursue. For him, the result was the same. If Hierarch Skyfire only wanted to delay for time to recover from his injuries, it would be meaningless. This was because while he was recovering from his injuries, Yi Shiwen's cultivation was also increasing at a shocking speed. The ordinary peak of the third realm was just the beginning. Hierarch Skyfire was several times stronger than the ordinary peak of the third realm. However, for Yi Shiwen, it wasn't the end. He was still improving. He felt that his limit wasn't here yet. At this moment, the foundation that he had laid previously had completely reflected his value. And if he didn't have a solid foundation previously, how could he have such amazing progress? As his strength increased, Yi Shiwen was more confident in his heart. This was because he knew that with such terrifying strength, any resistance from Hierarch Skyfire would be futile. Many veteran Celestial Venerables watched the battle between the two of them and gasped. Hierarch Skyfire had almost deduced the great Tao of the Third Realm. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to display such shocking combat power. He was several times stronger than an ordinary Third Realm. Even so, he had accumulated this over a long period of time. However, Yi Shiwen had relied on his own strength to close this gap. Moreover, he had spent only a short period of time to surpass the ordinary peak of the Third Realm. He had also surpassed the Heavenly Fire Divine Lord. He had reached an unprecedented level. This was the peak realm that many veteran Heavenly Masters hadn't reached. They couldn't help but be amazed. Unless he enters the Fourth Realm, I'm afraid he really isn't a match for him. A veteran Heavenly Master couldn't help but sigh. In the Third Realm, he's almost invincible. This revered martial artist's growth is too fast. Another veteran Celestial Master sensed for a moment, and immediately judged that even if they had the advantage of the martial power and realm perception that they had accumulated for many years, facing Yi Shiwen who was in his peak state like the god of creation, they were afraid that they wouldn't have much chance of winning. It would have been fine if it had been in the past. However, in the current Fortune realm, a Third Realm Heavenly Venerate could already be considered invincible. Furthermore, he could dominate the Third Realm. It could be said that there weren't many Heavenly Venerates that could restrain him. Many people had seen such an amazing performance of Yi Shiwen, and felt an intense sense of crisis. They must find a way to break through as soon as possible. Otherwise, they would be surpassed by these juniors one by one if this continued. Nowadays, there were more and more young and terrifying juniors. It was inevitable that they had a feeling that the new generation was replacing the old, and the old generation was dying on the beach. Hierarch Skyfire, your biggest mistake was that you didn't kill me at the beginning. However, you don't have such an opportunity now. Yi Shiwen's expression became more and more indifferent. He could feel that his strength was still growing steadily. It had yet to reach the peak. The fruit of the World Tree had not only enhanced his martial power and enhanced his comprehension of the realm, but it had also cleansed his corporeal body, allowing his corporeal body to advance a step further. It had also increased the upper limit of his strength. Otherwise, Yi Shiwen would have been on par with Divine Fire Venerable who had been accumulating strength for countless years. It would have been impossible for him to surpass him. Even if that was already very terrifying, it was still not enough in his opinion. If this is all you have, then today will be the day you die. Chapter 34-24. Yi Shiwen could feel that he might have reached an unprecedented level in the Third Realm. His power continued to expand and increase. The energy of the World Tree Fruit was simply too strong. It increased his power, raised his level, cleansed his body, and allowed him to contain even more power. He reached a level that no one had ever reached before or since. Therefore, he was not worried about Hierarch Skyfire's counterattack. Any counterattack was nothing to him. As long as Hierarch Skyfire did not enter the fourth realm, it was meaningless to him. Everything was under his control. He was not afraid of Hierarch Skyfire's retaliation. Even stalling for time was a trivial matter. This was because with the passage of time, he would become stronger. In fact, his rate of improvement would far exceed Hierarch Skyfire's recovery rate. As time passed, Hierarch Skyfire seemed to have a chance of winning. In fact, his chances of winning were shrinking little by little until they disappeared. Hierarch Skyfire was panting heavily. His eyes were red as he looked at Yi Shiwen. It seemed that he couldn't understand. Back then, he had thought that Yi Shiwen was just an ant. How had he grown to such an extent that he was injured? He was several times stronger than ordinary peak Third Realm celestial venerables. Defeating them wouldn't be difficult at all. However, he now discovered that Yi Shiwen had also become so strong. Unlike him, who relied on his accumulated martial power and his comprehension of the higher celestial venerables realm, Yi Shiwen had purely charged forward and killed his way to this realm. At this time, even if he was stupid, he would understand that it must have something to do with the fruit that Yi Shiwen had swallowed before. But what was that fruit? Even someone as knowledgeable as him had never seen it before. In fact, he had never even heard of it. He could feel that Yi Shiwen's aura was gradually becoming more terrifying. It was becoming more and more powerful. It did not stop growing for a moment. It was as if there was no upper limit. This was the most terrifying thing, and this was also what he feared the most. As his strength continued to increase, Yi Shiwen's aura became stronger and stronger. It was even completely suppressing him. If this continued, he was afraid that he would not even have the chance to attack. He had traveled the world for so many years and had never encountered such a troublesome situation. It made him feel a little desperate. Yi Shiwen's smile carried a bit of indifference and also a bit of ridicule. It was particularly dazzling in his eyes. He only felt that his Taoist heart that had been calm for countless years was going up and down with a huge wave. All the blood in Hierarch Skyfire's body condensed to a single point. In an instant, he felt as though he was about to break through the shackles that had trapped him for countless years. Even if it was just for an instant, it would allow him to regain the power he had in the past and completely destroy this fellow before him. In the blink of an eye, his blood and qi condensed to the limit and evaporated. The terrifying energy brought about by his blood and qi finally broke through the suppression of the heavenly Daos and rushed into that long-lost realm. Even if it was just a small crack, it was enough. The terrifying energy that surged out from the crack caused him to be instantly immersed in it. However, just as this feeling was about to spread through his entire body, a beam of light flew over from the distant shore of the galaxy. It turned into a palm that soared into the sky and slapped down, directly hitting his body. Bang! A terrifying palm force rippled out. In an instant, it emitted hundreds of millions of rays of brilliance. The entire universe was filled with brilliance, turning into countless waterfalls that directly spread out. And in the center of this palm, Hierarch Skyfire directly spat out a mouthful of old blood. The momentum that was just rising was suddenly interrupted. The crack that was originally blasted open by the endless blood and qi was immediately sealed. Boom! On his body, countless rays of brilliance along with blood splattered out. His entire body flew out and directly crashed into a huge star, smashing the star into powder. When he was ascending, he finally revealed his biggest flaw. And Yi Shiwen seized such an opportunity and suddenly erupted, directly injuring Hierarch Skyfire. All kinds of strange phenomena manifested under this palm. Countless blazing rays of light collided together, forming a terrifying energy storm. The entire galaxy was trembling and trembling. Countless creatures were shivering under the pressure of the two, not daring to resist at all. Yi Shiwen seized the opportunity at the moment of forceful ascension. Many veteran heavenly venerates sucked in a breath of cold air. They used to be experts at the 4th level or above, but they had been swept down to the 3rd level because of the Sky Pass tribulation. Breaking through the Sky Pass lock in a short period of time was their greatest trump card. Although they had to pay a painful price and consume an endless amount of vitality every time they tried to break through, they could temporarily regain their former strength, which was enough to eliminate the enemy in front of them. But now, Yi Shiwen had seized the opportunity at the moment of ascension and seriously injured them. Did this mean that they would never be able to ascend in front of Yi Shiwen in the future? Otherwise, they would be courting death. No matter how powerful their greatest trump card was, it was all fake if it couldn't be used. Thinking of this, they only felt a burst of coldness on their back. If this continued, they were afraid that they would have to avoid Yi Shiwen. Unless they succeeded in breaking through the bottleneck, otherwise, the title of the strongest person under the 4th realm would belong to him. "This is impossible!" Hierarch Skyfire roared. His roar caused countless meteors around him to collapse. Just as he was about to climb to the peak of his life, he was interrupted. And the person who interrupted him was Yi Shiwen. Whoosh! Yi Shiwen suddenly appeared in front of him. He just looked at him coldly and said, "Do you think I will give you the opportunity to ascend?" Yi Shiwen's body released an oppressive pressure. It was boundlessly terrifying. He was like the center of the entire universe, and all the stars were revolving around him. He was the creator of the world. As he spoke, he gently slapped his palm down. The slender palm slapped down, silently revealing an extremely terrifying scene. Wherever it passed, space, time, and laws all collapsed. However, there was no sound at all. This was because even the sound laws had collapsed in an instant and could not be transmitted. Hierarch Skyfire roared and snarled. He wanted to struggle, but it was useless. This palm was too terrifying. It slapped down with unimaginable power. Bang! His bones were broken on the spot. Blood blossomed in the center of the world. His entire body was almost destroyed. His blood evaporated, and his spirit was shattered. He was burning fiercely. The entire Milky Way trembled violently. Yi Shiwen had used his killer move, and it carried an incomparably terrifying might. Originally, Yi Shiwen's strength was not as good as Hierarch Skyfire. Although he could barely withstand the power of the cosmic creation palm, even if he hit Hierarch Skyfire, it would be difficult to hurt him. At most, it would cause his blood to tremble. However, it was different now. Yi Shiwen had already surpassed the heavenly fire god. He had completely surpassed him. He had stepped into the domain that no one had ever reached before. He was extremely powerful in the 3rd realm. Every move he made had great power. He could injure the heavenly fire god with just one palm strike. His strength is improving, and it is improving very quickly. Somewhere in the heavenly palace of fortune, Eastern Venerate opened his heavenly eye and said as he watched the development of the situation. Yi Shiwen had given him too many surprises. Moreover, there were more and more. Originally, he thought that it was already amazing that he could contend with Hierarch Skyfire. Now, it seemed that he was almost invincible. In this era where most heavenly venerates were trapped in the 3rd realm, the benefits of having such an invincible master in the 3rd realm as a helper were naturally imaginable. And Yi Shiwen had such combat power. When he became a middle heavenly venerate in the future, it would undoubtedly be much easier to become an Eastern venerate. At that time, he would be able to obtain the support of the Eastern venerate and truly wield the power of the Fortune God dynasty. He would be able to do something that no one had been able to do since ancient times. It wasn't just the Eastern venerate. Many people were also watching this battle. They watched Yi Shiwen as if he was a god. He had easily injured Hierarch Skyfire. They adjusted their evaluation of Yi Shiwen one after another. Many people were even wondering if they had offended Yi Shiwen. They could only hold back on some of their original plans against Yi Shiwen. What a joke! Yi Shiwen was too terrifying among the Third Realm. Hierarch Skyfire, who was blasted away, directly drew a huge crack in the galaxy. However, Yi Shiwen's offensive did not stop. A rainbow bridge appeared under his feet. This rainbow bridge crossed the entire galaxy and rushed to the front of Hierarch Skyfire. Then, another universe creation palm slammed down. Boom! Hierarch Skyfire's entire body was drenched in blood. It was full of various cracks. His entire arm exploded in the air. Just now, he had used this arm to resist Yi Shiwen's universe creation palm. However, he was simply no match for Yi Shiwen. At this time, Yi Shiwen's skills had completely crushed Hierarch Skyfire's. He was not a match for Yi Shiwen even at his peak, let alone now. In the blink of an eye, he paid the price of one of his arms exploding in order to escape. He screamed and roared as he ran towards the Fortune God dynasty. At this point, he had no other thoughts in his mind other than the burning desire to survive. Thus, he ran towards the Fortune God dynasty. This was because only in the Fortune God dynasty could Yi Shiwen act with scruples. Only then could he escape and escape back to the southern region to obtain the protection of Tianzuan Nan. This was also his only way to survive. However, how could Yi Shiwen let him escape? He stepped on the rainbow bridge and crossed. On the other side, he flipped his palm and turned it into an incomparably huge martial emperor seal. 3,000 martial Dao blessings were infused into it. It fell fiercely and directly slapped Hierarch Skyfire's body. Puff! Hierarch Skyfire's physical body exploded on the spot. Chapter 34-25. Boom! Holy Lord Skyfire's body exploded on the spot. He was almost smashed into pieces. Which Heavenly Lord's body hadn't been forged after experiencing thousands of calamities and tribulations? It could be said that it was indestructible and untainted by karma. However, it had been smashed into pieces by Yi Shiwen. This was still a physical body at its peak. Because of the drop in realm, Divine Supremacy Skyfire's physical body was actually very strong. It was far stronger than ordinary Third Realm expert. That was why he could be several times stronger than ordinary Third Realm expert. But now, in front of Yi Shiwen, everything was like plastic foam, instantly turning into nothingness. His primordial spirit turned into a beam of light and escaped. Everyone could even see the panic on his primordial spirit. Many supreme existences gasped. How much despair did a celestial venerate have to be to abandon his physical body? If he did not condense and escape, he would not be able to escape from Yi Shiwen's pursuit with his physical speed. But even so, it was useless. Yi Shiwen's speed was the fastest in the world. He spread the law of time and formed a domain of the law of time. All of a sudden, Divine Supremacy Skyfire's spirit slowed down. Then, Yi Shiwen grabbed it in his hand and was about to crush it to death. He wanted to completely end this enemy that had made Yi Shiwen tremble in fear since he was in the Emperor realm. Wait! Suddenly, there was a loud shout. Then, a figure streaked across the sky and appeared in front of Yi Shiwen. It was none other than Southern Tianzuan. Why, Southern Tianzuan, are you going to stop me? Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and looked at Southern Tianzuan. Although Southern Tianzuan was a high and mighty ruler in the Fortune God dynasty, Yi Shiwen was not afraid of him. Let alone in the eastern region, there was nothing to worry about even in the southern region. He had also reached the peak of the third realm. Although he had not broken through and reached the fourth realm, he was not a character that could be easily crushed. Wu Zun, he is very important to the southern region. Can you let him go? At this time, Southern Tianzuan spoke. He had a somewhat awkward expression on his face, but he had to come. Divine Supremacy Skyfire was his important help on the road to becoming a Middle Tianzuan. He was indispensable. And if there was one less person on his side, and Eastern Tianzuan had one more peerless master, it would undoubtedly break the balance between the two sides. At that time, Eastern Tianzuan would have an even greater advantage. No, Lord Nan, I don't care how important he is to your southern region, but this is our personal grudge. I don't want the Fortune Divine Dynasty to get involved in this matter. No, Southern Tianzuan, I don't care how important he is in the southern region, but this is our personal grudge. I don't want the Fortune God Dynasty to get involved in this matter. Yi Shiwen waved his hand and grabbed Divine Lord Sky Fire's body into his inner world. As soon as Divine Lord Sky Fire's body entered Yi Shiwen's inner world, countless talisman puppets flew up and flew into Divine Lord Sky Fire's body. They sacrificed him and turned into endless brilliance. They sprinkled directly on the world tree. The world tree was irrigated by the brilliance of blood essence. Another fruit of the world tree was gradually taking shape. It already had a preliminary shape. Although Divine Supremacy Skyfire was only one person, he was at his peak. His vitality was much stronger than the previous Emperor Hunyuan and others. In the past, Yi Shiwen would find a way to sell the Emperor Hunyuan after killing him. However, he would not do so now. He wanted to stay and irrigate the world tree. These heavenly venerables absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and were immortal. Who knew how much essence they had absorbed between heaven and earth? Now that they had returned to the world tree that nurtured countless worlds, it was a worthy death. Seeing Yi Shiwen's action, Southern Tianzuan's face darkened. Yi Shiwen did not intend to give him any face at all. Wu Zun, what kind of grudge do you have between you two that you have to fight to the death? Is it because he attacked you this time? If that's the case, I think he is willing to apologize. No matter the price, the southern region will definitely satisfy you. Southern Tianzuan said. He only cared about speaking. Whatever price he had to pay in the end was up to the Divine Fire Sect, not him. Anyway, he was just being generous at the expense of others. Moreover, in the southern region, the Divine Fire Sect was already too strong. They even dared to cross over and compete with the southern Tianzuan residents. Now that they had been seriously injured by Yi Shiwen, they had no choice but to rely on southern Tianzuan. This was also a huge benefit for him. Moreover, after this incident, the heavenly venerables of the southern region would only trust him even more, as he was willing to stand up for his subordinates. This would naturally be of great benefit to him. Whether it was for public or private reasons, he had to lend a helping hand. Wu Zun, it's time for us to lead the army to the era battlefield. Isn't an additional heavenly venerate an additional force? Southern Tianzuan looked at Yi Shiwen and said. First, he expressed that he would definitely compensate Yi Shiwen. Then, he used the era battlefield as an excuse to make Yi Shiwen hesitate. However, his thinking was still too simple. He didn't know the extent of the grievances between the two of them. Yi Shiwen didn't even think about it. He just said, originally, if Southern Tianzuan had spoken, I would have given you some face. However, you don't know what's going on between us. Do you think it's just because Southern Tianzuan attacked? I'm not angry that he attacked the human race this time because he was seeking his own death. However, this bastard actually wanted me to be his slave before I achieved my Tao. When I achieved my Tao, he even took the opportunity to cause trouble, almost causing me to fail. Tell me, if it were you, would you let him go? As Yi Shiwen spoke, everyone finally understood that there was such a hidden grievance between Yi Shiwen and Divine Fire Sect. It was definitely not a grudge that was formed in a short period of time. In fact, it wasn't even because of Divine Fire Sect's sneak attack. It was something even further back. What Yi Shiwen had said was to make a celestial master a slave. That would definitely lead to an irreconcilable ending. A celestial master was a proud heaven's favored one. Even if there was a huge gap between their realms, they could still be regarded as a friend. Although some celestial masters had united and cooperated with each other, it would undoubtedly be a taboo to make the other party a slave. As for the latter matter, there was no room for negotiation. Achieving Tao was something that heavenly venerates had to experience. All heavenly venerates had encountered situations where they had a slim chance of survival. At this time, anyone who dared to jump out would be an irreconcilable enemy. Therefore, when a heavenly venerate reached the Tao, unless the enmity between them had reached a certain level and they were irreconcilable, or if they were forced into a corner and had no choice but to try their luck, normal people wouldn't make a move unless they were 100% confident. This was something that a heavenly venerate would remember for the rest of his life, waiting for endless revenge. Many people came to a realization. No wonder Yi Shiwen was absolutely unwilling to let Divine Skyfire go. No wonder Divine Skyfire would rather give up his close cultivation and come to kill Yi Shiwen. Both sides were very clear that no matter who won or lost, one side had to fall. At this time, anyone who came to persuade them to stop would be hated. There was no exception. It was nothing more than seeing who would make a move in the end. Naturally, Heavenly Venerate South also understood this truth. He had never thought that the grudge between Yi Shiwen and Divine Skyfire had actually reached this point. This was different from space-time Heavenly Venerate suspecting that Yi Shiwen had killed Emperor Godri. To put it bluntly, it was a matter of an emperor. It was not worthwhile for two Heavenly Venerates to fall out with each other. However, the two matters that he mentioned now were enough to make the two Heavenly Venerates become irreconcilable enemies. Seeing that Heavenly Venerate South was silent and did not speak, Yi Shiwen could not help but say, "Heavenly Venerate South, I know what you're thinking. It's not that I don't want to give you face. It's just that there's nothing much to talk about between me and him. If he doesn't die, then I will die. It's impossible for me to let the tiger return to the mountain." If Divine Skyfire was just an ordinary third realm, Yi Shiwen would not have such a huge reaction. After all, if Divine Skyfire was improving, wouldn't he be improving too? However, Divine Skyfire was only swept down to the third realm because of the Heavenly Pass tribulation. Moreover, he was about to break through the Heavenly Pass. If he let him go this time, Divine Skyfire, who would make a comeback next time, would definitely become a huge threat. Although Heavenly Venerate South had great influence to ask him to let the tiger return to the mountain, it wasn't to such an extent. "Wu Zun, as long as you are willing to give up on killing him, I can agree to whatever compensation you want as long as I have the ability," Heavenly Venerate South thought for a while and said. He also understood that it was impossible to get Yi Shiwen to agree with him just by saying it out loud. However, Yi Shiwen shook his head without hesitation. What Heavenly Venerate South promised was tempting, but he would definitely not do something like letting the tiger return to the mountain. "Heavenly Venerate South, there's no need to say any more. I'm definitely going to kill him. I don't care how the Fortune God dynasty deals with this matter in the end, but he's definitely going to die." Yi Shiwen immediately flipped his palm, and a raging flame suddenly burned on his palm. It was the Nanming mythical fire. Poor Divine Skyfire had played with fire all his life, but in the end, his spirit was burned to death by Yi Shiwen's flames. Heavenly Venerate South's expression was extremely gloomy. Yi Shiwen did not give him any face, and he was completely enraged. Chapter 34:26. Yi Shiwen just looked at Heavenly Venerate South indifferently. He was not afraid. Although Heavenly Venerate South was indeed terrifying, he was not the same as before. The person he had to look up to in the past was now on an equal footing with him. After the era's battlefield began, not only would Eastern Heavenly Venerate plan to make great contributions and become a Middle Heavenly Venerate, but he would also plan to hone himself in the era's battlefield, improve his strength, and compete for the position of Eastern Heavenly Venerate in the future. At that time, the two of them would be on an equal footing. What was there to be afraid of? Moreover, it was fine to give him face for ordinary small matters. However, divine venerate sky fire was different. These old monsters were more determined than the other. Such a huge defeat could not shake their determination. Once the tiger returned to the mountain, they might take advantage of this huge setback and enter the fourth realm. At that time, it would be the real terrifying start. Once they entered the fourth realm, they would quickly regain their previous strength. This was the most unfavorable news for Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen had experienced countless battles in his life. Not all of them were smooth sailing. He had also encountered enemies that were so powerful that he could not even muster the slightest resistance. However, he had never been discouraged. Those people had now become bones by the roadside in his pursuit of the Great Way. Who would remember their names now? Yi Shiwen had always expected his enemies to be broad. He would never underestimate others easily. He would rather kill the wrong person than let the wrong person go. This was Yi Shiwen's most fundamental attitude. How could Southern Heavenly Venerate ask him to release sky fire? Moreover, he absolutely could not tolerate anything that hindered him from achieving the Great Way. If he tolerated it, who wouldn't dare to step on his head in the future? Southern Heavenly Venerate looked at Yi Shiwen coldly and gradually released his aura. At this time, no matter what he was thinking, he had to show his attitude. Yi Shiwen could not back down either. Both of them had reached a crossroads where they could not back down. No matter how much Southern Heavenly Venerate's aura increased, Yi Shiwen could contend with it. Southern Heavenly Venerate, come back. Let's discuss the matter of going to the Era's battlefield. Just as the atmosphere between the two of them was about to freeze, a voice rang out. It was none other than the Eastern Heavenly Sovereign. Yi Shiwen just looked at Southern Lord Tianzuan. He knew that in the end, Eastern Lord Tianzuan had stepped in and given Southern Lord Tianzuan a way out. He didn't force Southern Lord Tianzuan to fight Yi Shiwen in the end. Humph! In the end, Southern Tianzuan only let out a cold snort and left abruptly, because he knew that continuing to stand in confrontation would not end well. Could it be that they would really start fighting? Even if he was willing to take action, the Eastern Venerate would definitely not stand idly by. At that time, it would become an incomparably embarrassing matter for him. Now that the Eastern Venerate had given him a ladder, he would naturally step down. Well done, ha 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 ha. Yi Shiwen was just about to leave when he heard the carefree laughter of Eastern Tianzuan. It was obviously a secret sound transmission. Although he had given Southern Tianzuan a way out at the critical moment, it didn't mean that their relationship was good. There was cooperation and there was opposition. This was the normal state between them. As a member of the Eastern Venerate's camp, Yi Shiwen's prestige had greatly increased. For the Eastern Venerate to advance to the Middle Venerate, it was impossible to achieve it in one go. It was accumulated over and over again. Yi Shiwen was in a good mood after killing Divine Lord Sky Fire in one battle. He felt that the door to the Great Way had opened a little more. Without this heavy pressure, his state of mind had reached a higher level. He only felt that he wasn't too far away from the fourth level. It was very difficult for ordinary people to break through because their accumulations weren't strong enough. However, he was strong enough. Even a veteran Empyrean like Hierarch Skyfire could be several times stronger than him. In addition, he still had half a calamity breaking incense. It was only a matter of time before he broke through to the fourth realm. Of course, the most important thing was that with the Fortune God Dynasty's recasting of the Good Fortune Key, the original Heavenly Gate tribulation was not so serious anymore. Although the effects caused over the years were still there, it was no longer impossible to break through like before. However, Yi Shiwen had never lost confidence. The heavens and realms had suppressed the emperors for thousands of years. Apart from Emperor Qin, who once tore through the shackles, he was the only one who had done it with his own ability. How many dangers had he not encountered in his life? A small problem like this was nothing to him. Yi Shiwen returned to Mount Buzhou. However, the frenzy he had set off had only just begun to brew and ferment. Originally, Yi Shiwen was already quite famous. He had just entered the celestial venerate realm for less than 10,000 years, and he had defeated celestial venerate Great Sun, who was in the limelight. However, in the eyes of many people, it was nothing. He was just a slightly stronger newly ascended celestial venerate. The phenomenon of seniority among celestial venerates was very serious. The fundamental reason for this was that the longer one cultivated, the deeper one's skills were, and the stronger one's strength would be. This was inevitable. However, Yi Shiwen's appearance had broken this myth of seniority. He had only become a celestial venerate for less than 10,000 years, but he had defeated celestial venerate Skyfire, a veteran celestial venerate who had been cultivating for countless years, and even killed him. No one's words were useful. Even celestial venerate South, who had great power in the court, could not be given face. Not only did he have character, but he also had strength. This kind of person was the most terrifying in the eyes of many people. This was because celestial venerates during this period were undoubtedly at their sharpest. They were in the expansion period, so whoever bumped into the muzzle of the gun might erupt into an indelible conflict. He was different from those veteran celestial venerate. After countless years of conflict, he had already stabilized his foundation. Every move he made was not filled with anger, and he was not so flashy. Many people even had some thoughts of following the light. Ordinary people were not enough to make them have such thoughts, but if it was other celestial venerates, then it was completely different. However, Yi Shiwen's appearance had made them feel a threatening sharpness. At this stage, he didn't understand the meaning of compromise. He didn't understand the meaning of retreat. He would fight and kill whenever he encountered a problem. Such a person made them feel a bone-deep chill. Because Yi Shiwen was new, he did not abide by the rules. However, he had the strength to not abide by the rules and not be punished. Unless it was an extremely powerful person like the North, South, East, and West celestial venerates, no one else was his opponent. As long as they did not break through, they would not be his opponent. Because of this, in their eyes, Yi Shiwen had become annoying, and the light on his body was dazzling. Yi Shiwen did not know that he had begun to become dazzling in the eyes of many people. People who were too strong had never been very popular. However, even if he knew, he would not care, because he was very clear about what he was pursuing. However, just because he didn't care didn't mean that others weren't happy either. Through this great battle, more and more people recognized his existence. It wasn't like before, when his fame and many legends were concentrated at the Empyrean level. In this battle, Yi Shiwen had risen from the ranks of the new celestial venerates to a position that was equal to the veteran celestial venerates. He was almost an outstanding person among the current celestial venerates. After this battle, many emperor lords of the eastern region came to visit. There were people from various clans, and even the veteran emperor lords of Heavenly Dao and Silvermoon clan came to visit. The scale was unprecedentedly grand, and it made it seem as if Yi Shiwen had just entered the celestial venerate realm. However, in fact, he had already entered the celestial venerate realm for tens of thousands of years. However, this was just the beginning. In the eyes of the real people, Yi Shiwen was now truly recognized by the veteran celestial venerates. Regardless of whether they were willing or not, Yi Shiwen had already risen to become a person that they had no choice but to take seriously. Originally, when Yi Shiwen had just become a celestial venerate, many people had come to congratulate him, but the Silvermoon clan and Heavenly Dao had not made any moves. These two were the leaders of many large sects in the eastern region, while the other was the leader of the strong clans in the eastern region. The attitude of these two giants represented that the human race had not truly been recognized. Although the human race was already above the ordinary large clans, there was still a huge gap between them and the top 10 super sects and the top 10 strong clans. Previously, the heaven-devouring demon clan had always felt that they were the third strongest clan in the eastern region, just below the two giants, if the eastern heavenly venerate palace was not included. They had also felt that as long as the heaven-devouring demon emperor entered the celestial venerate realm, he would be on equal footing with them. In fact, this was a very ridiculous thought, because they had never truly entered the world of celestial venerates. Even the heaven-devouring demon emperor had been killed by Yi Shiwen when he had just attained Tao. Therefore, they did not understand that there was a huge gap between celestial venerates. At this time, the strength of a clan was only a part of the composition of status. The real gap was still the gap between celestial venerate. Now, Yi Shiwen had finally made up for this last shortcoming and obtained recognition. The human race had also truly become the third largest civilian force that could decide the major events in the eastern region. As for the clan's background compared to the Heavenly Tao and the Silver Moon clan, no one had mentioned it, because it was nothing compared to Yi Shiwen's dazzling performance. From today onwards, everyone would pay attention to the words of the human race. No one would dare to ignore the voice of the human race, because there was a martial venerate among them, and that was enough. One person bringing the entire clan. This had happened since ancient times, and now it was happening again in the present era. While Yi Shiwen was still busy with these matters, he finally received news from the Eastern Heavenly Venerate. He gathered the army and was about to rush to the epic battlefield. Chapter 34-27 Yi Shiwen had killed Hierarch Skyfire in less than a year, and the Fortune God Dynasty's army had already gathered to support the epic battlefield. They headed to the Fortune God's capital. This time, besides Yi Shiwen, Moon Empress Bian Xiaoye, the Human Emperor, and the Thunder Emperor were also leading the army. In addition, there were also 1,000,000 human race elite. This was not an ordinary army of the human race, but the elites among the elites. Any captain was at least a god king, and there were many quasi-emperors among them. There were more than 200 of them. Although it wasn't a lot of people, they had brought all the elite. The main force of this battle was the Fortune God Dynasty's army, and the others were merely assisting. If the Fortune God Dynasty used the others as cannon fodder, the sky would be turned upside down. However, Yi Shiwen had the idea of tempering the human race's elites, so he simply brought all of them. This was the foundation that had been developed for tens of thousands of years. Otherwise, if the human race brought such elites, it would be tantamount to giving up the defense of their lair. This time, apart from the human emperor and a few others, everyone else had been absorbed into his inner world by Yi Shiwen's great magic power. This had saved him from having to wait until he arrived at the other side to release a large amount of black clouds. When Yi Shiwen arrived, the other celestial venerables also arrived one after another. All the celestial venerables who were heading to the epic battlefield had gathered. They also stood according to their respective camps, a total of 5 groups. Everyone else did the same thing as Yi Shiwen. They also took the armies of their clans into their own inner worlds. They only brought a few emperors with them. For a time, there were hundreds of people present, and all of them were famous in the outside world. They could make the world tremble with a stomp of their feet, but here they were the most ordinary people. The emperors didn't even have the qualification to speak, and could only respond in silence. The other camps were fine, but the Southern Celestial Venerables camp was obviously hostile. In contrast, the Celestial Venerables who were close to the Spacetime Celestial Venerables also had unfriendly expressions. On the other hand, the Celestial Venerables under the Northern and Western Celestial Venerables looked indifferent. Obviously, because they were too far away from each other, it was difficult to become enemies even if they wanted to. Ha ha ha, Martial Highness, you're quite something. Even Southern Lord Tianzuan has lost his temper because of you. A crisp voice rang out from the West Heavenly Venerate's camp. Who else could it be other than the West Heavenly Venerate? Among those present, she was the only one who dared to poke at Heavenly Venerable Nan's scars. Her strength was not inferior to Heavenly Venerable Nan's, and she was also a female Heavenly Venerable, so it was inevitable that she had the upper hand. Yi Shiwen's face revealed an unfathomable expression. He wasn't sure. Did the West Heavenly Venerable really think that he had some tricks up his sleeve? Or was he simply trying to incite an even greater conflict between him and Lord Southern's camp? Sure enough, as soon as he finished speaking, the Empyrean South's camp's Empyrean Venerates all looked over. Yi Shiwen could only think to himself, women who could enter the Empyrean realm were not simple. They were even more powerful than male Empyreans. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to stand out in this male-dominated world. Seeing that Yi Shiwen didn't reply, the West Heavenly Venerable wasn't annoyed. She just looked at Bian Xiaoye, who was behind Yi Shiwen. Her eyes suddenly lit up, and she said, "This should be your chief disciple, Moon Empress. I've heard of her. She's a rare genius. She has only cultivated for more than 10,000 years, but she has already entered the Emperor realm. She's really good." The West Heavenly Venerable's words immediately made everyone look at Bian Xiaoye. Yi Shiwen didn't help her block this time. As an Emperor realm, he should have such boldness. Bian Xiaoye also didn't move. Her expression was indifferent, and no one could tell whether she was nervous or not. "It's my disciple's blessing to be appreciated by the West Heavenly Venerable. Hurry up and thank the West Heavenly Venerable," said Yi Shiwen lightly. "Thank you, Your Honor." Bian Xiaoye stepped forward and saluted gracefully. Her expression didn't show much emotion. She wasn't stupid. How could she not see that the West Heavenly Venerable wouldn't say that out of pure praise? Because of her words, many Heavenly Venerables cast hostile gazes at her master. She could also feel it. She is indeed a very intelligent girl. If she wasn't your chief disciple, I would want to come over and train her well. The West Heavenly Venerable didn't care about the indifferent attitude of Yi Shiwen and the West Heavenly Venerable. "Thank you for your kind intentions. My disciple is stubborn and mischievous. This time I also want to bring her to see the world. Otherwise, she doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. She thinks that she is very powerful just because she has cultivated to the Emperor realm," said Yi Shiwen indifferently. He calmly returned the West Heavenly Venerable's words. "Okay, it's time. Let's get ready to go." At this time, when the West Heavenly Venerable still wanted to say something, the East Heavenly Venerable appeared at the right time and said. At this time, everyone saw a giant warship slowly emerge from the void. This giant warship emitted a blazing light, almost as if the sun had reappeared. Since many people have not been to the epic battlefield this time, I will explain. The epic battlefield is in the depths of the chaos. It is at the outermost edge of the fortune realm. Its location is even further than the chaos where you usually go to search for treasures. Just the transmission array alone can't send you there in one go. If you want to go there, you will have to face the power of space. Even Heavenly Venerables will be seriously injured and torn apart. You can only use this good fortune warship that was specially refined by the Fortune Realm Lord, explained the East Heavenly Venerable. This time, there were people like Yi Shiwen and the others who were going there for the first time. This kind of explanation was very necessary. Yi Shiwen remained calm. He had already guessed some things. If the epic battlefield was very close, then the experts of the ancient era would have already broken in and caused damage to the Fortune Realm. However, they didn't. This meant that the true name epic battlefield was so far that even the experts of the ancient era couldn't cross it directly. It should be known that crossing the chaos was like an ordinary person sailing a small wooden boat across the vast and boundless sea. They could be overturned by a wave at any time. The danger level in the chaos was much higher than that of the sea. Even emperors would be in great danger if they entered. Even Heavenly Venerables wouldn't dare to say that they could completely escape unscathed if they went too deep. Only the strongest heavenly venerables could move freely in the chaos. It would be impossible to cross such a place without the help of external forces. Bian Xiaoye and the others revealed a shocked expression. They didn't know the specific situation of the epic battlefield. However, for the Fortune Realm, no matter how far it was, they could easily reach it by switching to a few transmission arrays. It was very convenient. Now, they had a vague idea of how far the epic battlefield was. After a moment of hesitation, many people quickly calmed down. After all, the people present were either emperors or heavenly venerables. They were all extraordinary existences. There might not even be one in a billion living beings. They followed their respective heavenly venerables onto the Good Fortune battleship. This is my first time riding on this Good Fortune battleship. It is said that the power of this Good Fortune battleship is extremely terrifying. It can rampage through the endless chaos. A casual collision can destroy a world. It is also one of the trump cards of our Fortune Realm, the War Emperor said in amazement. This time, he didn't bring too many people with him. He only brought his disciple, the Butterfly Sovereign. The two came to a place on the deck of the battleship and sat cross-legged. The Butterfly Sovereign, the Moon Empress, and the others quickly followed. It's good that the Good Fortune battleship hasn't gone to the epic battlefield yet. I can share with you some of the things I've found about the epic battlefield recently, said the War Emperor. His voice could only be heard by Yi Shiwen and the others nearby. Please say it. Yi Shiwen's eyes lit up. This was what he lacked the most. Originally, he wanted to go to the epic battlefield and inquire about it. There were no records about the epic battlefield, even among the human race. The other sovereign emperors also sat upright and still with a solemn expression. Among the several ancient eras that are fighting with the Fortune Realm, the bigger ones are the Devil Dao era, the Evil Dao era, the Law Dao era, the Buddhist Dao era, the Dragon Clan era, and so on. They were all supreme existences that once swept through a world. Yi Shiwen's eyes widened. The names of these eras were clearly passed down in the Fortune Realm and even in other worlds. How could these be ancient eras? Fellow Taoist, you must be very surprised when you hear these names. Fellow Taoist, you must be very surprised when you hear these names. I was also very surprised when I found out. Later, I learned that the Fortune Divine Dynasty is not the only era, but the other eras that experienced the Great Calamity were not completely destroyed. There are many inheritances left in the Fortune Divine Dynasty. Not only the Fortune Divine Dynasty, but the eras before it also experienced the Great Calamity. Now, if the Fortune Divine Dynasty also experienced the Great Calamity, we will also leave behind a part of our era's inheritances. In that case, each era has its own unique civilization. Then, what is the unique civilization of our era? Is it martial arts? Yi Shiwen immediately asked. That's right. That's right, fellow Taoist is indeed smart. Our epoch is the so-called martial epoch, and the unique great Tao of our epoch is the martial Tao. Therefore, the later epochs, the more wonderful and numerous the great Tao will be. When the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch was still alive, he had speculated that the Heavenly Tao might be upgrading. Every great apocalypse is a process of upgrading, and it will only end when the 3,000 great Taos are gathered. Then, it will advance to an unknown level. At that time, the world might not experience another great apocalypse and can develop for a long time, said the War Emperor. The so-called 3,000 Great Tao is not unique to our martial Tao era. Almost all eras have similar sayings, so it is widely spread. Chapter 34-28. 3,000 Great Taos, one Tao for each epoch. Doesn't that mean that this world will be destroyed 3,000 times? Yi Shiwen's expression changed slightly. This was a huge blow to the Moon Empress, Butterfly Empress, and the others. For them, one great apocalypse was already a horrifying death tribulation, not to mention 3,000 great apocalypses. This is also the fundamental reason why they fight with us so frequently. If they can't plunder enough resources and luck, they won't be able to survive the great apocalypses. After all, according to speculation, they might have to go through 3,000 great apocalypses before they can usher in the eternal era, the war sage said seriously. 3,000 times. Yi Shiwen's eyebrows twitched. He didn't know how many great apocalypses this world had gone through, but it wouldn't be solved with just 1 or 2 great apocalypses. At that time, it would be hard to avoid going down the same path. However, that would be in the distant future. Before the great apocalypse, his cultivation might have already been able to survive the great apocalypses. After all, it wasn't just 1 or 2 epochs that survived. There was no reason why the martial epoch couldn't survive. The urgent matter now was to repel the attacks of the other ancient epochs. If the defensive line was broken like this, there would be no future. Such cases had indeed happened before. Yes, 3,000 times. However, that's a matter in the distant future. We have to repel their attacks now, the war sage said. As soon as the war sovereign finished speaking, the Good Fortune battleship started to move. When the huge battleship started to move, it didn't make a single sound. Its body emitted countless blazing rays of light, and after accelerating, it charged into the teleportation array. Everyone's surroundings immediately changed, turning into a passage flickering with endless 7-colored lights. Countless laws of time and space manifested and intertwined with each other, forming this passage and space. Seeing the rarely seen laws of time and space manifesting, everyone on the battleship sat cross-legged and started to comprehend. This kind of opportunity wasn't something that they could come across at any time and place. The speed of the Good Fortune battleship was getting faster and faster. Very soon, everyone had no idea where they were. The Good Fortune battleship was still speeding up in the teleportation array. At some point in time, a defensive barrier had appeared on the periphery of the Good Fortune battleship. Otherwise, even a sovereign emperor would die in the face of this terrifying speed that could tear through time and space. Yi Shiwen looked at the laws of time and space that were quickly dispersing in front of him. He silently calculated its speed. When he really deduced it, his face couldn't help but change. The speed of this Good Fortune battleship was even faster than using the transmission array. At this speed, it was not an exaggeration to say that a collision alone could shatter a world into pieces. The battlefield of the epochs was so far away that everyone understood. Even when the Fortune battleship was flying at full speed, it actually flew for an entire day and night before finally stopping. When the Good Fortune battleship came to a stop, Yi Shiwen discovered that they were in a vast expanse of chaos. He could clearly sense that the omnipresent heavenly Tao in the Fortune divine dynasty was showing signs of weakening. For a heavenly venerate like Yi Shiwen, he could clearly sense that the restrictions of the heavenly Tao were weakening. Everyone should have sensed that the power of the heavenly Tao is weakening. We are now at the edge of the battlefield of the epoch. Everyone, stay alert. Because Moon City has been breached, a gap has appeared in the defensive line. Hence, we might be ambushed. Eastern Heavenly Venerate stood up and said. All the Heavenly Venerates and Emperors nodded solemnly. No matter how vast the Fortune Divine Dynasty's territory was, there was still a limit. When they reached the edge of the battlefield of the epochs, they could already sense that the Heavenly Tao was weakening. In other words, the suppression of the Heavenly Tao on the ancient era's experts was also weakening. After the reminder, Eastern Heavenly Venerate formed a hand seal, and the Good Fortune battleship started up again. It directly broke through the chaos and rampaged through it. This time, there was no 7-colored passageway. It was just that in the endless chaos, everywhere was the same. There wasn't much change. After a while, a huge city appeared in front of everyone. This city was so huge that even a heavenly venerate couldn't see it all at once. It was comparable to a large world. No, it should be said that this was a large world that had been captured and placed here. Then, it was built into a big city. Although all the heavenly venerates had seen many cities that were comparable to a continent, they were still shocked when they saw this huge city. Everyone, this is our destination this time, Sun City. This time, it was Northern Heavenly Venerate's turn to speak. Yi Shiwen looked around and saw that the city walls of Sun City towered into the clouds and pierced into the endless chaos. There were all kinds of arrays and boundaries engraved on them to resist the attacks of outsiders and the erosion of the chaos. These were extremely brilliant techniques that could only be arranged by experts above the Heavenly Venerate level. It was almost comparable to the divine capital of the Fortune Divine Dynasty. It wasn't something that ordinary powerful clans and great sects with Heavenly Venerates could do. Some of the arrays were extremely ancient. Time had left deep marks on them, but they couldn't stop the operation of the arrays. On the city walls, there were many tall and strong soldiers. It was obvious that Sun City had entered a state of absolute combat readiness because Moon City had been breached. Each of these soldiers had extraordinary cultivation. They stood on the city walls and wouldn't move for 100 years. However, these spirit formations and defensive boundaries were not aimed at the Good Fortune battleship. The Good Fortune battleship easily sailed into Sun City. From afar, the entire Sun City was very prosperous. It wasn't much worse than the divine capital of the Fortune Divine Dynasty. It was built by the Fortune Divine Dynasty with great power. Every city was extraordinary. The Good Fortune battleship crossed Sun City at a very fast speed. In just a moment, it arrived at the plaza in the center of Sun City and finally landed. There were already people waiting here. They respectfully led everyone on the Good Fortune battleship to a huge hall. There were already many heavenly venerates gathered in the hall. They were obviously experts from the 10 cities of heaven, earth, mysterious, yellow, universe, chaos, and sun-moon. Chapter 34-29. Inside the main hall, there were already many heavenly venerables and emperors waiting for them. Those who could enter this hall to discuss the grand plan were basically the Fortune God Dynasty's top experts. Quasi-emperors were not even qualified to step into this hall. In fact, there were some meetings that only heavenly venerables were qualified to participate in. There were also differences according to different specifications. After entering the main hall, the heavenly venerables sat on the rows of thrones in the middle, while the emperors sat on the periphery. Their seats were much lower than the heavenly venerables to reflect the supreme status of the heavenly venerables. There were also differences among the heavenly venerables. Ordinary heavenly venerables were seated on the two sides. There were 15 thrones at the top, but only 2 people sat on them. When the East, South, West, and West Great Heavenly Venerables arrived, they sat on 4 of the thrones. Even space-time heavenly venerables weren't qualified to sit on these 15 thrones. He could only sit below them. Although he was ranked first below these 15 thrones, he still couldn't sit on the same level as these 15 thrones. Yi Shiwen instantly understood. Among these 15 thrones, besides the East, South, West, and Central Great Heavenly Venerables, there were also the City Lords of the Heaven, Earth, Mysterious, Yellow, Cosmos, Desolate, Sun, Moon, and Desolate Era. He had heard about the structure of the battlefield from War Elder on the ship. In the Fortune God Dynasty, the East, South, West, and West Great Heavenly Venerables were the leaders. On the battlefield, the city lords of these 10 divine cities were the leaders. Both sides belonged to the 2 major divisions of the Fortune God Dynasty, so their status was considered equal. In terms of strength, they were also the top experts of the Fortune God Dynasty. However, Yi Shiwen didn't know which 2 city lords were originally sitting on the 15 thrones. But soon, Yi Shiwen found out from the 2 city lords' self-introductions. One of them was tall, and his entire body was shining with golden light as if he wanted to seize all the light in this world. He was the city lord of Sun City. Beside him was a middle-aged man with a medium build. His face was dignified without being angry, and he was in high spirits. As he looked around, He gave off an aura that could swallow the heavens and the earth. This person was none other than the Moon City's City Lord, whose lair had been breached. Although the Moon City had been breached, not all of the Moon City's experts had been wiped out in one fell swoop. A considerable number of experts had managed to escape, especially the Moon City's City Lord. He was one of the top experts in the entire Fortune Divine Dynasty. His status in the Fortune Divine Dynasty was comparable to the East, South, West, and West Heavenly Venerables. Naturally, he would not be killed so easily. But looking at him, there was no sign of the shadow of failure at all. Unparalleled heroes like him were more determined than the last. Even such a major event couldn't really affect him. Welcome to Sun City, Empyreans and Emperors who had stayed behind to guard the Fortune Divine Dynasty. However, due to the recent events, I believe all of you are already aware of it. Therefore, I won't waste your time on pleasantries. The Sun City's City Lord stood up and said. As the host, he naturally had the authority to lead this meeting. Now, I will briefly introduce the current situation of the battlefield. The Sun City's City Lord swept his eyes across the crowd and said, "Currently, the defense of the 10 God Cities has been breached, so the entire defensive line is in a precarious situation. Because of this, the other City Lords have not come because they have to stay in their respective divine cities. After the ancient Era's forces breached the Moon City, they began to sweep through the satellite cities near the Moon City. Currently, they have breached many satellite cities, and have slaughtered many of our Fortune Divine Dynasty's people. Currently, the armies of our 9 divine cities are gathering and planning to cooperate with the remaining forces of the Moon City to recapture the Moon City. Therefore, we can't attend to these satellite cities for the time being. Now that all of you are here, please dispatch your men to the satellite cities that have sent out the warning. Wiping out those ancient Era's forces is also a form of support for our operation." The heavenly venerables of the Fortune Divine Dynasty were in an uproar after Re-City's words came out. According to the Sun City's City Lord, it was obvious that he did not intend for them to intervene. This made many heavenly venerables who had planned to go all out feel frustrated. In particular, the East, South, West, and Spacetime heavenly venerables were a little depressed. All of them wanted to perform outstandingly in the battle to recapture the Moon City and ascend to the position of the Lord of the Fortune Divine Dynasty. However, it was obvious that the people on the battlefield did not have the same wishes as them. Yi Shiwen was a little puzzled at first. Did the City Lords of the 10 divine cities not want to increase their forces to recapture the Moon City? That way, their chances of winning would undoubtedly be much higher. However, he immediately understood why. It was not that simple. The position of the Middle Heavenly Venerables was very special. When the Fortune Heavenly Lord was still alive, he was the most important assistant of the Fortune Divine Dynasty. After the Fortune Heavenly Lord disappeared, the Middle Heavenly Venerables became the nominal Lord of the Fortune Divine Dynasty. Although the binding power of the Middle Heavenly Venerables could not be compared to the Fortune Heavenly Lord, it was still slightly stronger than the East, West, and City Lords of the 10 divine cities. At that time, the position of the 10 divine cities' City Lords would also be restricted to a certain extent. This was probably what they did not want to see. Although the Fortune Divine Dynasty could be said to be a group of dragons without a leader, the current situation where the leaders ruled over one side had already been deeply rooted. It had already become the best model that everyone had tacitly agreed on. Unless another powerful figure like the Fortune Heavenly Lord appeared out of nowhere, it was impossible to change the current situation. For Yi Shiwen, this was also a hindrance. After all, if the Eastern Heavenly Venerate didn't ascend to the throne, how could he succeed? Once he succeeded, he would become one of the most respected people in the Fortune God Dynasty. Does anyone have any objections? The Sun City City Lord looked at everyone and said. The heavenly venerables from the Fortune Divine dynasty looked at each other and then at the east, south, west, and west heavenly venerables, as well as space-time heavenly venerables. After all, they were the leaders of this operation, so it was up to them to see what kind of attitude they had. However, the few of them remained expressionless. After a long time, Eastern Celestial Venerates said, "I have no objections. Wiping out the experts of the ancient epoch in the periphery is also to better support the battle to take back Moon City." Since the East Heavenly Venerables had spoken, none of the other Heavenly Venerables objected. Naturally, the other Heavenly Venerables would not say anything else. Naturally, they would go back and ask. However, Yi Shiwen could more or less see from the Sun City City Lord's words that the Fortune Divine dynasty was not peaceful. Everyone wanted to ascend to the position, but similarly, no one wanted others to ascend to the position. "All right, then I will distribute the areas that the Heavenly Venerables are in charge of to you." The Sun City City Lord waved his hand, and suddenly, the Heavenly Venerables immediately received information on the battlefield and the cities that they were in charge of. Yi Shiwen also used his divine sense to explore it, and soon saw clearly that the area he was responsible for this time was the 31st district, which had been specially divided. There were 3 satellite cities in this district, and according to the information, one of the satellite cities had already been breached, and the remaining 2 satellite cities had sent a distress signal. These satellite cities existed to protect the 10 divine cities. It could be said that they were the outermost existence. However, because of this, Yi Shiwen had more doubts. According to the map given by the Sun City Lord, there were many satellite cities in the periphery of Moon City. How did the ancient era experts directly attack Moon City without uprooting these satellite cities? Moreover, they succeeded in breaching Moon City. Not to mention the densely packed satellite cities, just looking at the defensive power of Moon City, one could roughly come to a conclusion. Take the human clan as an example. Even if the entire race risked their lives to attack Moon City, it would be difficult to break through the surface of Moon City. Otherwise, the 10 divine cities would have been breached long ago. This was the first time since the establishment of the 10 divine cities. There must be some information that they did not know. It seemed that they needed to spend some time to collect information. If there are no other questions, then let's set off immediately. The military situation is urgent, and we cannot delay any longer. Sun City Lord said slowly. The Heavenly Venerables looked at each other and did not object. Although they were not familiar with this place, the chaos was not a dangerous place for them. Moreover, as the Sun City City Lord said, the military situation was urgent. If the ancient era experts completely occupied Moon City, then it would be very difficult to recapture it. Even the army of the ancient era could use this gap as the center and march straight in. The consequences were naturally extremely terrifying. This was also a consequence that they did not want to face. They still had the ability to look at the overall situation. With their cultivation, they did not need to rest and recover at all. They could immediately enter the battle without any pressure. Just as everyone got up and prepared to leave, suddenly, there was a shout from the Emperor Lord's seat. Everyone turned their heads and saw a male and female Emperor Lord facing each other in midair. The female Emperor Lord was glaring at the male Emperor Lord. Yi Shiwen's expression suddenly became sharp, because he realized that the female Emperor Lord was not someone else but Bian Xiaoye. At this time, Bian Xiaoye's face revealed a somewhat angry expression. Her embroidered eyebrows were upside down, and her eyes seemed to be shooting flames. And opposite her, there was a handsome male Emperor Lord looking at Bian Xiaoye with a somewhat lascivious expression. His eyes were fixed on Bian Xiaoye, as if he did not care about the gazes of others. "How dare you!" Yi Shiwen shouted angrily and waved his sleeves. Suddenly, a huge force swept towards the male Emperor Lord with a thunderous momentum. Chapter 34:30. Yi Shiwen's attack was as fast as lightning. In an instant, it tore through space and swept in front of the male Emperor Lord. With Yi Shiwen's strength, the consequences could be imagined if he hit the target. However, Yi Shiwen didn't care. A mere Emperor Lord was nothing to him. So what if he was slapped to death? He was a heavenly venerate now. He didn't have to worry about a mere Emperor Lord. Moreover, although he didn't see this person's actions, he could roughly guess it from his expression and Bian Xiaoye's annoyance. He was immediately furious. However, at this critical moment, a large hand reached out and slapped Yi Shiwen's attack. Yi Shiwen's attack instantly dissipated like a mass of air and disappeared without a trace. Yi Shiwen suddenly turned his head. His gaze was as sharp as a knife as it pointed straight at the Moon City Lord sitting on the throne. The Moon City Lord's expression didn't change as he faced Yi Shiwen's gaze. He just looked at Yi Shiwen indifferently. "What do you want?" Yi Shiwen couldn't help but ask. "I would like to ask, what do you want? Why did you attack my son?" The Moon City Lord asked faintly, but his gaze was like a torch. He wasn't afraid of Yi Shiwen's gaze. "Why would I attack? Your son dared to harass my disciple. That's a capital crime," Yi Shiwen said coldly. He just realized that this male Emperor Lord was actually the son of the Moon City Lord. He couldn't help but frown slightly. If the City Lord of Moon City had lowered his head, Yi Shiwen would have let it go. However, the City Lord had a high and mighty appearance, without a trace of guilt. This completely enraged Yi Shiwen. The City Lord of Moon City was very powerful, but he was not a soft persimmon that anyone could pinch. "What's your name?" The Moon City Lord looked at Yi Shiwen. His expression was still full of arrogance. He was always like this when it came to people like Yi Shiwen who he couldn't even remember. However, in Yi Shiwen's opinion, this arrogant expression was even more abhorrent. "He is a newly promoted heavenly venerate in the Eastern region, a martial venerate, and an elder of the human race." Eastern Venerate stepped forward and said, faintly pointing out that Yi Shiwen was from the Eastern region. The Moon City Lord had to give him some face even if he didn't want to. Human race? Is it the race of the guy who committed a heinous crime and stole the creation key? The corner of the Moon City Lord's mouth twitched. He seemed to have thought of something. Then, he looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "I didn't expect someone from that clan to be promoted to the Celestial Master level again. It's really incredible. If you were under my command, I would have killed your clan long ago to prevent future disasters." Yi Shiwen raised his eyebrows slightly, his expression sinister. The Moon City Lord was not only insolent, he even threatened to destroy the human race. This had already violated the second bottom line in Yi Shiwen's heart. Fellow Taoist must be joking. After all, the rise of Wu Zun has contributed a lot to our Fortune God dynasty, and has contributed greatly to our Fortune God dynasty. Eastern Venerate said with a faint smile, casually categorizing the Moon City Lord's words as a joke. "As for the past, isn't it all in the past? Is it over? How many Taoists have suffered because of this? Because of him, our epic battlefield's defensive area has been reduced again and again. If not for this, how could today's incident have happened?" The Moon City Lord said loudly. Yi Shiwen stepped forward, his eyes like lightning as he stared at the Moon City Lord and said, "I can't afford to wear the hat of fellow Taoist. Whether it's the merits or demerits will naturally be judged by future generations. However, what I want to ask is, your son actually dared to disrespect my disciple. You should also give me an explanation." The other heavenly venerates stared at these two people, especially the three heavenly venerates from the north, south, and west. Space-time heavenly venerate, the Sun City Lord, and the others did not step forward to mediate. Although this was a time when everyone needed to be united, they also did not believe that these two people would start a war over two emperors. That was simply not worth it. Your disciple is also quite good-looking. Since my son likes him, then let our two families form an alliance. My son will marry your disciple as a concubine. How about that? Although the Moon City Lord's tone was asking a question, his tone was not negotiable. He finally displayed the imposing manner of an overlord. Even though Moon City had been captured and he was swaying like a stray dog, he was still one of the top experts of the Fortune God dynasty. In the Fortune God dynasty, whether it was in terms of strength or experience, he was at the forefront. He did not care about a new junior like Yi Shiwen at all. What a joke. How can a tiger girl be a match for a dog? Why don't you take a look at your son? He actually wants to marry my disciple as a concubine. Even if he is the main wife, he is not worthy. Yi Shiwen's face revealed a look of disdain and disgust. The Silver Moon City Lord's son had a lecherous look on his face. Although he was a level 7 Emperor Lord, his aura was unstable and his skills were mixed. It was obvious that his foundation was very poor. If he could rise to the Emperor Lord realm like this, who knew how many resources the Silver Moon City Lord had poured into nurturing this trash? People who relied on their elders to grow up were the type that Yi Shiwen despised the most. There were also some people who were born noble but had outstanding talent. That was nothing. However, the Silver Moon City Lord's son was obviously not like that. Hearing Yi Shiwen's words, the Silver Moon City Lord's face immediately fell. According to his temper, he would probably explode on the spot. Even if he was a heavenly venerable, he would not be an exception. After so many years of being high and mighty, he did not even care about ordinary heavenly venerables. If he was in a good mood, he would call them fellow Taoist. If he was in a bad mood, he would say all sorts of nasty things. Only the 4 great heavenly venerables of the north, south, east, and west, as well as the other god city lords, could make him slightly raise his eyebrows. No one expected that Yi Shiwen's words would be so fierce. This was no longer a falling out. He was ruthlessly tearing off the Silver Moon City Lord's face and slapping him. Many of the Era battlefield's heavenly venerables present knew about the Silver Moon City Lord's son. However, everyone knew that the Silver Moon City Lord doted on this child. In his early years, he wandered alone in the chaos. In the end, he was chased by an Emperor Lord of an ancient era. In the end, no one expected that the Silver Moon City Lord would disregard his dignity and personally attack him. He chased him into the depths of the chaos and finally killed him. After this incident, everyone already knew how much the Silver Moon City Lord doted on his son. No one was willing to poke at his scars on this issue. After all, Yi Shiwen was a newcomer. He obviously did not know this unspoken rule of the Era battlefield. This was a ruthless slap in the face. Moreover, this slap in the face was too ruthless. Who was a dog? Wasn't he talking about the Silver Moon City Lord? On the side, the Silver Moon City Lord's son was also flushed with anger. He had never suffered such a great insult in his life. As the Silver Moon City Lord's son, his life had been smooth ever since he was a child. His cultivation was nurtured by the Silver Moon City Lord at all costs. Normally, he was even more unscrupulous in his actions. Whoever dared to offend him would be offending the Silver Moon City Lord. Especially within the Silver Moon City's territory, no one dared to provoke him. Now, it was no longer provoking him. He was simply looking down on him. He had actually called him a dog. This was the first time he had been compared to a dog. "You old dog, what nonsense are you talking about?" In a moment of shock and anger, he immediately scolded loudly. Yi Shiwen frowned slightly and snorted coldly. The Silver Moon City Lord's son looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He knelt down and became even more unbearable. The other celestial masters also cast a somewhat disgusted look. They did not have a good impression of him in the first place. Moreover, at this time, the Silver Moon City Lord's son actually dared to yell at a celestial master and scold a celestial master as an old dog. This had already violated the taboo of a celestial master. Even if he was not scolding them, it would still make them feel uncomfortable. No matter which camp they belonged to, they were in the same trench at this time. If this kind of person was not taught a lesson, wouldn't there be people who would casually yell at them in the future? He even dared to call them an old dog. These words sounded like they were scolding Yi Shiwen, but it was also very suitable to scold them. Perhaps he had also scolded them like this in his heart. With this guy's arrogance, perhaps he really dared to have such thoughts. It was just that having such thoughts was a great disrespect to a celestial master. If it was not because of the Silver Moon City Lord's face, someone would have already killed him. Previously, when Yi Shiwen killed the heaven-devouring demon monarch, many celestial masters had secretly targeted him. This was the same reason why the Silver Moon City Lord's son had caused everyone to be unhappy and share a common enemy. Almost instantly, without giving everyone time to think, they saw the Silver Moon City Lord directly grab Yi Shiwen in anger. "You have no right to teach my son a lesson." When the Silver Moon City Lord attacked in anger, everyone immediately felt a huge pressure crushing down on them. The emperors felt even more terrifying and incomparable pressure, as if the world was about to be destroyed. In particular, Bian Xiaoye was directly affected. Her fair face was suddenly covered with dense fine sweat. The Silver Moon City Lord had only released a little bit of his aura, but it had already made an emperor like her feel that the world was about to be destroyed. She even had doubts about her own Tao. This was a situation that had never happened before. Yi Shiwen took a slight step forward and blocked in front of Bian Xiaoye. Suddenly, Bian Xiaoye felt that the huge tsunami-like pressure disappeared without a trace. Although this was extremely terrifying pressure for an emperor, for Yi Shiwen, who was also a celestial master, even if his cultivation was not as good as the Silver Moon City Lord, a little bit of pressure would not be able to do anything to him. Just as Yi Shiwen was about to make a move to resist the Silver Moon City Lord, the Eastern Celestial Master directly walked over from the side and casually dissolved the Silver Moon City Lord's big hand into nothingness. The Eastern Celestial Master said with a smile on his face, "There is no need for you to be angry about the matters of the younger generation. Moreover, your nephew really needs to be disciplined. You are disrespectful." Chapter 34-31. Eastern Heavenly Venerate's words made the other Heavenly Venerates nod in agreement. He dared to call a Heavenly Venerate an old dog. Not killing him was already giving the Moon City Lord face. Of course, Yi Shiwen didn't care. The son of the Moon City Lord saw that he was a Heavenly Venerate and thought that he had cultivated for a long time. However, in reality, Yi Shiwen's cultivation age might not even be a fraction of his. However, age wasn't the key in this world where strength was respected. Even though Yi Shiwen was much younger than the son of the Silver Moon City Lord, he was still disrespectful in the eyes of the Celestial Masters. He didn't distinguish between seniority and seniority. The Moon City Lord knew that he had incurred public anger. If it weren't for the fact that his son was the culprit, he would have agreed and instinctively protected the Heavenly Venerate's position. However, now that it involved his son, how could he watch his son get beaten to death? "Humph, I think this Martial Venerate should restrain himself. My son isn't someone anyone can teach a lesson to." The Moon City Lord could only snort coldly. He wouldn't be able to gain the upper hand if he flared up now, let alone when Moon City was breached. As the Moon City Lord, he had already suffered a lot of criticism. Since ancient times, ever since Moon City was established, it had never been breached. This was an unprecedented crime. If not for the fact that the main task at hand was to recapture Moon City, the Heavenly Venerate's censure would have been overwhelming. "Teach your son a lesson? I'm not that idle. He took advantage of my disciple. I'm just teaching him a lesson. Don't get carried away." Yi Shiwen's expression was cold and indifferent. He still didn't give the Moon City Lord any face. Humph! The Moon City Lord knew that it was unwise to start a war now. He had no choice but to glare at Yi Shiwen and leave with his son. After this commotion, The crowd dispersed according to their respective camp. However, before they left, they all glanced at Yi Shiwen. There weren't many people who dared to go against the Crescent City Lord. Moreover, they didn't give in at all. The people of the Fortune God dynasty had some understanding of Yi Shiwen. This was a fellow who dared to slaughter heavenly venerables when he was still an Emperor Realm Lord. Even if he was a little more reckless, it was normal. What was so strange about this? On the other hand, the Empyreans on the epic battlefield were a bit surprised. This newly ascended Empyrean was even more daring than they had imagined. On the epic battlefield, there weren't many people who dared to say such things to the City Lord of Moon City and not give in to each other. As for those imperial monarchs, they looked down on the situation. They didn't dare to get involved in the conflict between Heavenly Exalt. If they really got involved rashly, they would be courting death. Didn't they see the background of the Moon City's City Lord's son? Yi Shiwen said he would teach him a lesson. Who were they? Yi Shiwen, Eastern Empyrean, and the others finally relaxed a little when they arrived at the Eastern Empyrean residence's lodging in Sun City. At this time, Yi Shiwen noticed that there was another Empyrean hidden in the demiplane beside Eastern Empyrean residence. It seemed like he didn't want others to see him. This should be the Mr. Huang that Empyrean Silver Moon mentioned before. I just don't know where he came from. Even Empyrean Silver Moon doesn't have a clue. Yi Shiwen paid some attention. He would always be vigilant against people of unknown origins. Otherwise, he would have died long ago on the long road of cultivation. Ha ha ha, well done. Eastern Empyrean patted Yi Shiwen's shoulder and said, "But do you know why so many people are supporting you this time?" Yi Shiwen shook his head. He didn't know. This time, the Moon City fell. Although we came late and haven't found out a lot of specific information, it doesn't mean that we don't know anything. In fact, the Moon City's fall this time is related to the Moon City Lord's son, said Eastern Empyrean. His son is called Yin-Yang Integration Emperor. He cultivates the Yin-Yang dual cultivation technique left behind by a Empyrean. He relies on the intercourse of Yin and Yang to increase his power. Originally, he was trash, and it was impossible for him to cultivate to become a sovereign lord. However, he couldn't resist the Moon City Lord's coercion and temptation. He found a few sovereign lord wives for him. He relied on the essence of these female sovereign lords to cultivate for tens of thousands of years to enter the sovereign lord realm. He has cultivated for hundreds of millions of years, but he is still only a sovereign lord realm 7. Because this child is the only child left behind by the wife of the City Lord of Moon City, who had passed away before he reached the Tao realm. Also, because his wife suffered the curse in his place and was seriously injured, she passed away after giving birth to this child. Because of this, the City Lord of Moon City doted on him so much that everyone in the upper echelons knew about it. Eastern Celestial Venerate said slowly, "What does the destruction of the Moon City have to do with him?" Yi Shiwen frowned slightly and asked, "Don't worry, listen to me slowly. Isn't it difficult for his son to improve his cultivation? Because he recruited female sovereign lords for him in the early years, it has already caused great indignation and resentment. Moreover, the few female sovereign lords before him have already lost their chastity, and they are not as effective as the Yin Qi of virgins. Therefore, he simply went to the depths of the chaos and captured a demoness from the devil era. He wanted her to be his son's cultivation furnace. Who would have thought that this demoness also cultivates the dual cultivation technique? She hid it very deeply. After she plucked his son, she almost sucked his son dry. Moreover, she took advantage of the fact that her cultivation had skyrocketed to break free from the restriction that he had set up. However, he was unaware of this. In the end, he acted as a spy in the city and destroyed the Moon City in one fell swoop, said Eastern Empyrean. That's not right. Even if a sovereign lord attacked from the inside, it wouldn't be that easy to destroy the Silver Moon City. Yi Shiwen immediately frowned and asked. The defenses of the Moon City could be seen from the Sun City. If an sovereign lord dared to launch a sneak attack, wouldn't that be courting death? Because he used other means. It was the means of the supreme demonic master. That demoness background isn't small either. This matter can be concealed from others, but it can't be concealed from us. Originally, he had committed such a huge mistake that led to such serious consequences. How could the Moon City Lord escape so easily? But guess what he said? Said Eastern Empyrean with a sneer on his face. He said that he and his son are both victims of this matter. If we continue to force him, he will go and seek refuge with the ancient era. As soon as Eastern Empyrean's voice fell, War Elder couldn't help but shout angrily, "What a traitor!" He had always been loyal and devoted to the Fortune God dynasty. He couldn't accept the existence of such a person. He actually had the idea of betraying the Fortune God dynasty. Moreover, this was a huge mistake that he had committed. Yet, he still dared to do such a thing. It was truly unforgivable. It's just that no one cares about him now. If he seeks refuge with the ancient era, he will be more terrifying than 10 Empyreans who have defected, said Eastern Empyrean coldly. He is a person of this era. The Fortune God dynasty will not suppress him. In addition, he holds a high position, so he knows a lot of our dynasty's secrets. It's not good to provoke him now. Let's wait until we take over the Moon City. Yi Shiwen also knew the other reason why Eastern Empyrean didn't mention it. Although the Moon City Lord had committed a huge mistake, unless he personally opened the city gates, it would be difficult for a person with a high position like him to be put to death even if he was punished. Moreover, this kind of battle power was considered to be at the top of the Fortune Divine dynasty. Defecting to the enemy's side was indeed a big trouble, unless the Fortune Divine dynasty had absolute confidence in eliminating him. But even if the Fortune Divine dynasty had absolute confidence in eliminating him, losing such a powerful battle power would be a matter of time. The Moon City Lord understood this, so he was fearless. Even though he had just committed a huge mistake, he was still arrogant in front of Yi Shiwen. It was precisely because he had confidence that he could be fearless. However, you have to be careful. Be careful that he will target you. He is not an easy person to deal with. You have to be especially careful during this period of time in the era battlefield, said Eastern Empyrean. I understand. Yi Shiwen nodded. In fact, he had never relaxed his vigilance. Although it seemed extremely lawless to deal with an Empyrean from the same camp at such a critical time, and it didn't seem like something that anyone would do, Yi Shiwen would never underestimate his opponent. If it was him, he would not be lenient if it was necessary to eradicate future troubles. How could he dare to underestimate others? All right, all of you go and get ready. We will set off in a quarter of an hour. You all have the map, right? There is no need to gather this time. The military situation is urgent, said Eastern Empyrean. Yi Shiwen nodded slightly. He then led Bian Xiaoya and the others towards the huge palace that was assigned to him. As soon as they entered the palace, Bian Xiaoya said, "Master, I have caused trouble for you." "Silly girl, this is not trouble at all. It is that Yin-Yang Emperor who is seeking his own death. If his father had not stopped him today, I would have killed him with one palm," Yi Shiwen said indifferently. He understood what Bian Xiaoya meant. However, if he cultivated to become an Empyrean just to be a coward, then what was the point of his cultivation, becoming an emperor, and becoming an Empyrean? His path of cultivation had always been to advance courageously and be invincible. All right, let's put that guy's matter aside for now. We'll set off immediately to rescue those 2 cities. This time, I won't bring you along. You'll have to walk in this primordial chaos. Although it's very difficult for you to walk in such a deep primordial chaos with your current strength, it's still a good training. Primordial Qi isn't just dangerous, it can also temper your body. In the past, I used primordial qi to temper my body and created a supreme golden body," said Yi Shiwen. However, he had not entered such deep chaos in the past, and his cultivation was far inferior to the current Bian Xiaoye and the others. "If you really can't hold on, you can call a halt," Yi Shiwen continued. The eyes of the three of them lit up. How could they give up such a good opportunity? Usually, they would have been destroyed in the chaos if they could come here. This was an excellent opportunity. Chapter 34-32. The three of them had a strong heart, especially Yi Shiwen's existence. He was like a beacon that pointed out the path for their future development. With Yi Shiwen acting as their support, they naturally didn't have to worry about any fatal threat. They could fight to their heart's content and train themselves. After giving some instructions, Yi Shiwen immediately set off. This time, he didn't need to meet up. He already had a rough map of the era battlefield, so he naturally knew where to go. Although north and south couldn't be distinguished in the chaos, as long as there was a reference point, then everything would be fine. In the past, he used the Fortune God Dynasty as a reference point. Now, he used Sun City as a reference point. A three-dimensional map quickly formed in Yi Shiwen's mind. Soon, the four of them flew out of Sun City and entered the endless chaos. The chaos was endless. There was no day, no night, and there was no such thing as in all directions. Even the sky above Sun City was endless chaos. There was only a sun above Sun City that shone brightly, allowing Sun City to shine eternally and never have nightfall. Yi Shiwen and the others immediately felt the primal chaos energy washing over their bodies after they entered the primal chaos. Yi Shiwen was fine. This primal chaos energy couldn't really hurt him. It would automatically be refined once it reached his body. The primal chaos energy that was close to him couldn't keep up with his refining process. This primal chaos energy had even become an important aid in helping him comprehend the primal chaos law. Compared to him, Bian Xiaoye and the others were undoubtedly in a much more difficult situation. In the chaos, the closer they were to the Fortune God Dynasty, the more they would be affected by the laws of the Fortune God Dynasty. It was relatively calm. Here, they were already very far from the Fortune God Dynasty, so the chaos energy was very violent. Even emperors like them, who had indestructible bodies, felt very strenuous. It was as if endless chaos energy was constantly attacking their bodies. However, they quickly reacted and quickly mobilized their cultivation to absorb the chaos energy into their bodies to refine it. However, the chaos energy was different from spiritual energy. It was much more violent. Even with their tempered bodies, they still felt like they were being cut by knives when the chaos energy entered their meridians. There was a pained expression on their faces. It was a pain that reached the depths of their souls. However, they were all strong-willed people. Even so, they still continued to absorb and transform. After an unknown amount of time, when they felt that they had gradually gotten used to it, they discovered that their physical cultivation, which was originally very difficult to improve, had actually improved. This was especially true for Bian Xiaoye, who cultivated the Great Azura body, which was a very domineering body cultivation technique. However, her current cultivation was very close to that of the Azura demon lord of the past. Although there was still a gap in cultivation level, it was much smaller than the gap between a quasi-emperor and a sovereign. In theory, the possibility of her breaking through by a large margin was already very small. It could be said that she was already infinitely close to her limit. But now, with the help of the primal chaos chi, she had improved again. It was no longer a gradual improvement, but an obvious improvement. She was immediately overjoyed. However, Yi Shiwen's words echoed in her ears at this time: "Don't get distracted. Focus on refining the primal chaos chi and hurry on with your journey." Hearing this, she quickly focused on refining the primal chaos chi. As for hurrying on with their journey, She wouldn't go wrong as long as the primal chaos chi was guided by Yi Shiwen. She didn't have the skill that Yi Shiwen had. He couldn't multitask. The primal chaos chi couldn't cause fundamental damage to him. If she didn't pay attention, she might be invaded by the primal chaos chi and cause irreparable damage. Everyone moved forward. There was no space and no time in the primal chaos chi. They didn't know how long they had walked. Suddenly, a huge black shadow jumped out and went straight towards everyone. Reckless beast. Yi Shiwen could see at a glance that it was a primal chaos creature. However, it dared to attack them. Wasn't it courting death? Xiaoye, you go. Yi Shiwen directly assigned. Bian Xiaoye was still refining the primal chaos chi. However, she didn't have the slightest bit of stage fright. She directly rushed forward and blasted out the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. The 6 fist techniques had completely merged into one in her hands and exerted a huge power. She cultivated the Azura body and the devil power that Yi Shiwen had specially modified for her. Coupled with the complete 6 paths of reincarnation fist, she was like a fish in water. She erupted with unimaginable power. Bang! Bian Xiaoye's fist blasted on the figure. Suddenly, the figure of this huge creature was stopped. At this time, everyone could see what kind of monster it was. It looked like a fierce snake. However, its body was huge. Just the head of the snake was hundreds of meters tall. The entire snake's body was hundreds of miles long. This huge fierce snake was only slightly sluggish after being hit by Bian Xiaoye's fist. It didn't collapse. One must know that Bian Xiaoye's current fist strength could even penetrate a world. However, this monster was only slightly sluggish. The creatures that grew in the primal chaos were very strange and very powerful. This primal chaos creature hadn't reached the Emperor realm yet, but it could temporarily fight on par with Bian Xiaoye, who was in the Emperor realm. The entire primal chaos was stirred up by the battle between the two parties. Primal chaos aura spread out from top to bottom. Bian Xiaoye used her sovereign lord-level laws to protect herself, while this primal chaos creature had grown up in the primal chaos, so there was nothing to fear. For a moment it was hard to tell who would win. But soon, Bian Xiaoye, who had the upper hand in both martial arts and realms, steadily gained the upper hand. Another palm fell, and this primal chaos creature's body was smashed into pieces. It was injured and howling in pain. It retreated again and again. Bian Xiaoye, who had grasped the opportunity, would not let go of such a good opportunity. She bluntly and neatly used the 6 paths of reincarnation fist. In just a moment, this primal chaos fierce snake was already covered with cuts and bruises. It was drenched in blood. Then, another sword slashed down with the Tai Sovereign sword. She displayed the buried sword technique and directly penetrated the body of this primal chaos fierce snake. Its spirit was destroyed. At this time, Bian Xiaoye, who had just become an emperor, was in the same situation as Yi Shiwen, who had just become a heavenly master. She hadn't had time to refine her own Dao tool. However, she had the Tai Sovereign sword that Yi Shiwen had given her previously. It came in handy at the critical moment. She launched a fatal blow and killed this primal chaos fierce snake. Chapter 34-33. There seemed to be nothing in the chaos, but in fact there were many ferocious creatures. The Fortune God Dynasty's experts on the battlefield had no choice but to build a city to protect themselves. Part of the reason was to guard against these chaos creatures. The 4 of them continued forward and soon arrived at the first city on the map. The 4 of them flew at high speed, crossing the distance of a world in a single shift. They could have teleported directly through the transmission array, but the surrounded city had been cut off from the surrounding areas. Even the transmission array couldn't be used directly. There were also array masters in the ancient era. Since it was built in the chaos, even if it was just a satellite city of Moon City, it was in fact very majestic. It wasn't inferior to many famous cities of the Fortune God Dynasty. Otherwise, it wouldn't have been able to establish a foothold in the chaos. But at this time, this majestic city was besieged by countless experts. They were densely packed like ants attacking a city, advancing wave after wave without fear of death. There were all kinds of people on these experts. Some were humanoid, some were ferocious beasts, some were semi-illusory, and some were covered in crystals. Not only did they belong to different races, but Yi Shiwen could even see through their auras and laws at a glance. They should belong to different eras. Their bodies exuded a huge slave character. It was a language that Yi Shiwen had never seen before. But with Yi Shiwen's current cultivation, he only needed a glance to decipher any character. This was because any character was used to express and describe everything in the world. After one's cultivation reached a certain level, any ancient character was no longer a problem. One could see through it at a glance. After reaching the heavenly venerable realm, one could even easily decipher the characters of the ancient era before the great apocalypse. With Yi Shiwen's eyesight, he could naturally see that the reason these experts from different eras were risking their lives to attack the city walls was because of the slave character. It was a kind of restriction. If they didn't obey, they would die instantly. Rather than that, it was better to go all out. If they could break through this satellite city, they could still live. What was even more cruel was that even if these experts were killed, the slave restriction on their bodies would instantly activate and form a big explosion. Even the incomparably sturdy city wall would be blasted into many stone chips. The impact of 1 or 2 explosions might not be that great, but if there were too many of them, the city wall of this satellite city would still be riddled with cracks. This method of besieging a city by ants was too cruel. These people should just be cannon fodder to deplete the city's defense. The real big thing was still at the back. In the distance of this satellite city, there was a dense army. This army was much more uniform. They were all from the same race, and their demonic auras soared to the sky. Even the image of a peerless demon was formed at the head of the army. And in the depths of the army, battle fortresses were being activated. Terrifying beasts as huge as stars were lying dormant in the fortress. Their huge eyes were wide open, and they were ready to attack at any time. And in the most central area of the army, incomparably powerful magicians were pinching their hands and chanting. Terrifying demonic power was released from their hands and turned into terrible heavy hammers. They constantly cut through the sky and fell on the defense of the satellite city. Every time they hit, the entire satellite city would tremble. "It's the devil era." Yi Shiwen narrowed his eyes and said. He had long heard that those ancient eras would also fight against each other, plunder each other's experts as slaves, and plunder each other's resources. Among these eras, the devil era was especially cruel. Now that he saw it, it was indeed extremely cruel. On the other hand, Bian Xiaoye and the other two's expressions changed slightly. Based on their cultivation, it was hard for any problems in their cultivation to affect them, but this kind of terrifying battle mode was rarely seen in the Fortune Divine Dynasty. Compared to the war on the battlefield of the eras, the internal war of the Fortune God Dynasty was not too shocking. Yi Shiwen directly released the human race's army. An army of over 1 million appeared in the chaos space. Moreover, they were all elite. Their imposing manner soared to the sky, and soon attracted the attention of the Devil Era's army. They immediately understood that the Fortune God Dynasty had sent reinforcements, and immediately sent 1 million Devil Era's army to stop them. The human race's army, which had just entered the chaos space, was not used to it. But Yi Shiwen immediately used his magic power to protect them. Unlike Emperor Realm experts, they could walk in the chaos space with their physical bodies, but they would encounter some trouble. But Yi Shiwen saw that the Devil Era's people could walk freely without any trouble. It was not because their cultivation was high, but because they must have some other means. Thinking of this, Yi Shiwen opened his heavenly eye and directly saw through the Devil Era's grand formation. He immediately understood that they had a special armor that allowed them to walk in the chaos space. It was just that they couldn't walk for a long time. For an army to travel, they had to rely on special artifacts. Of course, there were also super powerhouses like Yi Shiwen who led the army. After understanding this, Yi Shiwen immediately refined it on the spot. With his current cultivation, refining 1,000,000 sets of armor was a piece of cake. Moreover, the heavenly treasures he had obtained in his inner world were piled up like a mountain. As his cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds, he no longer had any use for them. Now was the perfect time to refine all of them into armor. With a wave of his hand, he could give the human race's army a set of armor. With his cultivation, it was not difficult for him to protect them with magic power. But he had come to train the human race's army, so he didn't want to protect them so well. At this time, the Devil Era's army had just set out to stop them. It was enough to show that Yi Shiwen's refining level had improved. Yi Shiwen pointed at the Devil Era's army that had set out to stop them and said to Bian Xiaoye and the others, "Do you see the Devil Era's emperor inside? You go and capture him and kill him." In this army, a burly Devil Era's emperor with many scales covered his body like an armor was running around. No one dared to disobey his orders. Yi Shiwen did not plan to directly intervene. Instead, he was carefully guarding against the possible appearance of the Devil Era's celestial master. Now, he did not know where the Devil Era's celestial master had gone. Otherwise, the Devil Era's army's attack would not end here. Understood. Bian Xiaoye nodded and immediately shouted to the human race army, "Everyone, get into formation and attack. Defeat them in one fell swoop and break the siege in the city. Crush them." The human race army quickly set out. Like a tsunami, thousands of soldiers and horses rushed towards the Devil Era's army. The two armies were like two huge waves crashing into each other. In an instant, people were thrown off their feet. Bone fragments flew everywhere and blood flowed like a river. This was the first time the human race army had fought against the ancient Era's army. At first, they were not used to it, but they quickly got the hang of it. After all, they were the elites of the human race. In terms of quality, they were superior to the demonic Era's army. Even so, they were not the most elite of the demonic Era's army. Soon, the human army completely suppressed the demonic epoch's army. Like layers upon layers of huge waves, they crushed all resistance. But at this time, a figure leaped out and went against the flow. With a loud roar, he rushed into the human race army. He did not attack the ordinary human race martial artists, but directly attacked a peak quasi-emperor. Clearly, he wanted to kill the top experts of the human race army one by one. However, at this critical moment, a figure leaped out. With a delicate shout, she turned into a 6 paths of reincarnation and suppressed the Devil Era's sovereign emperor. Dang! The Devil Era's sovereign emperor immediately felt the power of this attack. He did not dare to continue chasing and quickly raised his hand to block. Suddenly, he felt a huge force and his entire arm went slightly numb. Although it was expelled in an instant, he still revealed a shocked expression. The Devil Era's sovereign emperor was famous for his tyrannical physical body. There were not many who could fight against them. At this time, a woman in a white robe appeared in front of him. She clenched her fist and looked at him coldly. You are actually cultivating a demonic art left behind by my demonic Tao era. Ha ha ha, this is just right. If my dual cultivation technique can absorb the pure demonic art that you have cultivated for so many years, your cultivation will definitely improve greatly. At this time, the Devil Era's sovereign emperor was not angry. Instead, he was overjoyed. In his eyes, the woman in front of him was destined to become his plucking furnace. You overestimate yourself, Bian Xiaoye sneered. With a leap, she rushed forward and fought with the Devil Era's sovereign emperor. However, the Devil Era's sovereign emperor's cultivation was very high. He was above the 7th realm. There was a huge gap between him and Bian Xiaoye. You don't need to resist. With your strength, it is impossible for you to escape from my hands. The Devil Era's sovereign emperor laughed loudly. He did not dare to underestimate Bian Xiaoye's attack. However, the difference in cultivation was too big. It was impossible for her to pose any great threat. Just obediently follow me. You also cultivate the martial arts of the Devil Era. You and I are a match made in heaven. Coming to our Devil Era is the best choice. Disgusting thing, you think you can do it? At this time, a loud voice rang out. The human sovereign directly attacked from the side, while the sky-shaking Thunder Emperor flanked from the other side. When the three of them worked together to attack this demonic epic's sovereign emperor, Xiao Chen could no longer deal with them as easily as before. This was especially so since the heaven-shaking Thunder Monarch's cultivation was above his and not below it. Immediately, battle chi flew everywhere. Chapter 34-34. This Devil Path Emperor Realm expert was clearly a veteran. Even though he appeared to be flustered by the three people's attacks, he managed to regain his footing quickly. This was not the first time he had fought with the Fortune Divine Dynasty's experts, and he was no stranger to this era's martial Dao. Thus, it was relatively easier for him to fight. Although Bian Xiaoye's group of three had the upper hand, they had never fought against a Devil Era's Emperor Realm expert before, so the laws they used were different. For a time, even though he had the upper hand, he couldn't turn this advantage into an opportunity to kill the Devil Era's Emperor Realm expert. But because the Devil Era's Emperor Realm expert was being held back, the army he led could no longer block the human army. Although the scale of the Devil Era's Emperor Realm expert was about the same, there was a huge difference in the level of elites compared to the human army. When this difference was multiplied to millions, it triggered a qualitative change. Soon, the Devil Era's army was routed and retreated. They weren't a match for the human army at all. In this primal chaos, once they were injured, it would be a dead end for them given their strength. In just a moment they were all killed. In contrast, Yi Shiwen's incarnation was standing among the human clan's army. It was healing the injured from time to time, and instantly resurrecting them to full condition. A phoenix was hovering above the army. Wherever it passed, all the injuries would be instantly healed, and it would participate in the battle in high spirits. In this situation that was akin to cheating, they weren't a match for the human army. At this time, the Fortune God Dynasty's people in the satellite cities also noticed the situation here. Initially, they were on the verge of despair after being continuously attacked, but at this moment, it was as if they had seen a life-saving straw. The Fortune God Dynasty's reinforcements had finally arrived. Although they had never seen these reinforcements before, and their races had never seen them before, judging from their aura, they were undoubtedly the Fortune God Dynasty's reinforcements. That was enough. Not to mention, their performance was so ferocious. In a short time, they routed the Devil Era's army of 1 million. This defeat naturally attracted the attention of the demonic epic's army. 4 of the demonic epic's sovereign emperors flew into a rage. They turned their armies around and charged at the human army. They immediately charged out to assist the sovereign emperor of the demonic era, who was being held back by Bian Xiaoye and the others. At this point, they had already thought things through. If they continued like this, they would have to first eliminate the reinforcements from the Fortune God Dynasty, or else it would become a huge threat to them. Furthermore, a mere army of 1 million soldiers had 3 sovereign emperors. This was a huge threat. Moreover, they had seen the combat power of the human army of 1 million soldiers. They had killed the demonic epic's army of the same number, as if they were chopping vegetables. This was a huge threat, and they had to deal with it first. After the sovereign monarchs from the demonic path era joined the fray, they quickly posed a huge threat to Bian Xiaoye's team. The sovereign monarchs from the demonic path era were all top-notch expert. They were all at the 7th or 8th level. Additionally, they had lived for countless years. Some of them had even survived before the Great Apocalypse. Their cultivation bases had reached a terrifying level. Bian Xiaoye's team would find it very difficult to deal with them even if they were at the same cultivation level. Only the sky-shaking Thunder Emperor could barely resist them. As for Bian Xiaoye and the human sovereign, they immediately fell into a crisis. When Yi Shiwen saw that Bian Xiaoye's team was about to collapse, he finally made his move. He conjured a giant hand made of primal chaos chi and slapped it down. Not good. It's a heavenly venerate. The sovereign monarchs from the demonic path era instantly felt that this giant hand contained a terrifying will that was difficult to resist. It was as if the heavenly Tao wanted to kill them. They weren't unfamiliar with this feeling. They had also felt the same way when facing the heavenly venerables of their own era. These old foxes reacted almost immediately, but it was useless. Under the might of this power, they could only resist it slightly even if they erupted with all their might. Then they were slapped. Just when they thought they were dead, they suddenly discovered that they were still alive. However, they soon discovered that their cultivation bases had been suppressed. They were directly divided into 3 battlefields. Bian Xiaoye and the sky-shaking Thunder Emperor each faced 2 enemies, while the human sovereign faced 1 alone. Their cultivation bases had been suppressed to the same realm as the other party. He didn't kill them, but he sealed their cultivation. Almost instantly, they understood why this was happening. They immediately felt extremely humiliated because they instantly understood why the other party's heavenly venerables wanted to use them as stepping stones to temper these 3 emperor monarchs. Immediately, they were enraged. Their originally ruthless character broke out and they directly rushed forward to kill the other party. Perhaps they might have a chance of survival. If they knew from the beginning that there was a heavenly venerate hidden in this army of millions, they might have fled immediately and not dared to go forward. What a joke! Although they were strong and had many hidden trump cards, they had no chance of winning against a heavenly venerate. Moreover, they were not even peak sovereign monarchs. However, they had no other choice now. They could only kill their opponents to have a chance of survival. They didn't know how many years they had lived. They absolutely didn't want to die here. Bian Xiaoye and the others naturally understood Yi Shiwen's intention. They understood that Yi Shiwen wanted to temper them. However, there was no time to say anything at this time. In order to survive, the opposite Devil Dao era's emperor pounced on them like crazy. Even if they were transferred to the same realm, it was still very strenuous for them to face these old monsters who had lived for many years. However, at this time, the heavenly Tao was still in the Fortune God dynasty, so they still had the advantage. In the same realm, those old monsters from ancient eras often had the strength that they had accumulated over many years. Once they lost this advantage, they would immediately become much weaker. After Yi Shiwen dealt with this matter, he looked at the battlefield again. At this time, the Demon Path era's army of tens of millions was charging towards them. For the millions of human soldiers, this was undoubtedly extremely shocking. If they were not the elites among the elites of the human race, they would have gone crazy seeing such a lineup. Only in the primal chaos, where there was space everywhere, could such a terrifying army be easily deployed. Yi Shiwen attacked again. The Avicii sword appeared in his hand. Then, he swung it lightly as if nothing had happened. However, the terrifying and matchless demon King Phantom that was condensed from the army soul above the Devil Dao era's army seemed to have been slashed by something and instantly shattered. PFFF, PFFF, PFFF. In an instant, countless Devil Dao era's army coughed up blood. The army soul was the condensation of all their willpower. As long as the army soul was not broken, their combat strength would also increase greatly. However, once the army soul was broken, all the people who had integrated their essence, chi, and spirit into it would be seriously injured. Given the army soul condensed from the Devil Dao era's army, even emperors wouldn't dare to attack it. Otherwise, they would suffer a severe backlash, and even peak emperors would be seriously injured. Therefore, when an emperor-king faced an army of this level, he could only do whatever he wanted. However, it was impossible to fight against millions of soldiers alone. A single soldier would not be able to withstand a single strike from them. However, after they condensed the army's soul, they became extremely terrifying. However, with Yi Shiwen's strength, it was naturally not a problem. The power of the backlash couldn't even break through Yi Shiwen's defense. After coughing up blood, the army's attack came to a halt. This time it was really a heavy blow. They couldn't even assemble a complete formation. Even the army's soul had been destroyed, let alone them. However, almost in the blink of an eye, the human race army had already stepped on their beams of light, fiercely stabbing into the battlefield like a steel blade. Wherever they went, they were invincible. Because the souls of the army had been destroyed, they could not even organize a decent counterattack. Many of the weaker ones had directly turned into idiots. Only some experts could react quickly. Their cultivation was more profound, and their recovery speed was faster. However, the scattered group of 30 to 50 people was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. They couldn't stop the human race army. In a short time, the human race army went back and forth several times. Everywhere they passed, the Devil Dao Era's army was annihilated, and they were utterly defeated. More than 1 million people were directly killed or trampled to death by each other. When the sovereign emperors from the demonic Dao era, who were fighting Bian Xiaoye's group of 3, saw this, tears of blood flowed from their eyes. These were the troops and elites that they had brought out from the great apocalypse. Now, however, they were being slaughtered like chickens and dogs. They knew that the Fortune God dynasty's heavenly venerables must have taken action. Otherwise, with the Devil Dao Era's army's army soul's combat strength, even if their overall combat strength was slightly inferior, it would be very difficult for the human race army to resist their massive numbers. After a long time, they might even be swallowed up. They had an absolute advantage in terms of numbers, but they couldn't resist the other side's heavenly venerables. This was a perfect confrontation between quantity and quality. The human race army had the advantage in quality, but they didn't have the advantage in quantity. However, with Yi Shiwen's help, they had completely pulled back the advantage. Therefore, it was difficult to say which side was more powerful. Go all out. Kill them. The Devil Dao Era's emperor's demonic nature erupted. They entered a state of bedevilment and began to attack crazily. Chapter 34-35. Although the human race only had 1 million people, with Yi Shiwen's help, they were able to kill to their heart's content with just 1 million people. The Devil Path Era's army was forced to retreat again and again. The Devil Path Era's army simply couldn't organize a decent defense. Their entire army's spirit was crushed. At this time, an army of 1 million people quickly gathered on the satellite town and rushed out to attack the Devil Era's army from the front and back with the human race army. Although they were not as elite as the human race army, the Devil Era's army had lost its spirit. Even the human race army could not stop them and was forced to retreat again and again. The slave masters who were attacking the satellite town stopped one after another. At this time, the people who were controlling them could not even look after themselves. Naturally, they did not need to send themselves to death one by one. However, they did not take advantage of the chaos to escape because they were under the slave restriction. Even if they escaped to the ends of the earth, it would be useless. As long as the Devil Era's people were still alive, they would die with a single thought. What was even more cruel was that if the Devil Emperors leading the Devil Era's army died, they would also die and be buried with them. This was similar to the seal that Yi Shiwen used on the sky-shaking Thunder Emperor, but it was more cruel. Anyway, they were going to die anyway, so it did not matter at all. Just as the armies of the human race and the satellite star city pincered the Demon Path Era's army and forced them to retreat, A figure flew out from the satellite star city. It was a sovereign emperor. He went straight to Yi Shiwen and bowed respectfully. "Greetings, Your Honor. Junior Mu Huang represents the entire city to thank Your Honor for coming to rescue us." This was an Empyrean whose entire body was shrouded in a dark green aura of the laws, like an old tree. At a glance, it could be seen that he cultivated the wood laws. "Get up. No need to thank me. I was ordered to come to rescue you," Yi Shiwen said with a wave of his hand. The Mu Huang got up and glanced at Yi Shiwen. Then, he could not help but ask, "Please forgive this junior for not knowing Your Honor's great name. I am from the Fortune God dynasty. My title is Wu Zun. It is normal that you do not know me." This time, when the Fortune God dynasty heard that Moon City had fallen, they led the army to rescue us. I am just one of them. Now, all the armies have gone to different places to rescue us, Yi Shiwen said faintly. "Is that so? That's great." Mu Huang was pleasantly surprised. In this period of time, they had encountered unprecedented changes. The Eternal God City that was known as the Eternal God City had actually fallen. Their satellite cities were right next to the Moon City. He knew that there would definitely be an army from the ancient era coming to attack them. He had been living in a constant state of anxiety, waiting for reinforcements from the other divine cities. Now that the reinforcements from the Fortune God dynasty had arrived, his heart instantly calmed down. "Are you the only emperor in your city?" Yi Shiwen looked at the Wood Emperor. This Wood Emperor's martial power was quite profound. He also had the cultivation of the Eighth Realm. He wasn't inferior to the sky-shaking Thunder Emperor. However, Yi Shiwen felt that he wasn't enough to guard such a huge satellite city. Originally, there were two other Taoist friends. However, the Devil Lord of the Devil Era had attacked us. Both of them were killed in that battle. I was also seriously injured. In the end, we could only defend passively. If it weren't for the Lord leading the army to rescue us, I am afraid that we would have fallen like the other cities. Mu Huang couldn't help but reveal a sorrowful expression. The two Taoist friends who had fallen in that battle were his comrades for many years. Extreme Tao experts like the Emperor were not emotionless. How could such a long-lasting friendship not hurt? There was a heavenly lord from the Devil Era? Why didn't I see it? Yi Shiwen asked. Originally, the Devil Lord of the Devil Era was also participating in the siege. However, he seemed to have received some news and left, leaving only the army to continue the siege. Later, it was the Lord who came to rescue us. Mu Huang explained. Yi Shiwen frowned slightly. If there was a demon venerable in the Demon Era's army, then the situation would be different. However, it didn't matter. When that demon venerable returned, he wouldn't be able to overturn the situation. Although these satellite cities weren't as majestic as the 10 great divine cities, it was impossible for a heavenly lord to break through them alone. This was because when these cities were built, they were built by heavenly lords of the Fortune God dynasty. They also had countermeasures against heavenly lords. Otherwise, there would be no need to mobilize the army. Just those heavenly lords could sweep through them one by one. Yi Shiwen told the Wood Emperor about the 3 cities he was in charge of. Now, he had rescued this city. Another one had fallen. Only the situation of the last one was still unknown. Reporting to Your Honor, as far as I know, the Demonic Path Epoch's army is responsible for sweeping through this region. Now that the Demonic Path Epoch's army has gathered here, they shouldn't have moved against the other city yet. Your Honor can let them pass. Mu Huang paused and said, "That's good." Yi Shiwen nodded. If they broke through a satellite city, they would definitely be able to plunder a lot of resources and wealth. It was no wonder that those ancient eras had to sweep through the cities in batches and regions. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to divide the spoils evenly. Lord, now that I see that the other Taoists under you are having a hard time, do you need me to help? The Mu Emperor suggested. With his strength, he would naturally be able to greatly improve their situation once he made a move. No need. I'm doing this to hone them. Otherwise, I can easily destroy these Devil-era's demon emperors. Yi Shiwen shook his head. Mu Huang finally understood Yi Shiwen's plan. He couldn't help but be shocked. What a grand plan! Using these Devil-era's emperors as stepping stones to hone his subordinates, only a heavenly lord could do such a grand plan. Since Yi Shiwen knew that the other city was safe and sound, Yi Shiwen could breathe a sigh of relief. He didn't have to hastily end the battle here and rush to the other side to provide support. He could watch them fight. Although Yi Shiwen had suppressed their abilities, it had also stimulated the ferocity from the source of life in their bones. Not to mention, in their opinion, this might be their only chance to escape. Therefore, Bian Xiaoye and the others were having a hard time fighting, especially Bian Xiaoye. Her cultivation was the weakest, and her realm was also the weakest. Now, she had to face two old monsters who had been suppressed by Yi Shiwen to the same realm. At this time, she had also been forced to use all her potential. She no longer thought about the matter of Yi Shiwen standing by the side. She only treated this as a life and death battle. At this moment, the mysterious creation pill that she had swallowed earlier was being refined frantically. Originally, with her skills, it would have been impossible for her to refine it in one go. She only needed to refine it a little. Just a little bit was enough to help her stabilize her realm. And now, in this life and death battle, the medicinal power of the mysterious creation pill began to spread. She only felt that the more she fought, the more profound her cultivation became. The more the battle went, the more it became smoother. Gradually, she didn't feel so uncomfortable. She gradually found her own rhythm and advantage from the airtight attacks of the two experts. The same was true for the other two. As the core of the human race, they were naturally rewarded by Yi Shiwen with mysterious creation pills. After all, during the trip to the divine capital of fortune, Yi Shiwen had fished in troubled waters and obtained a lot of mysterious creation pills. For him, who had already entered the heavenly lord realm, the effect of mysterious creation pills was no longer that significant. But for these emperors, it still had a miraculous effect. At this time, they had gradually played their role. They were no longer completely passive. In fact, as time passed, the more they fought, the more intense the battle between the two sides became. The entire primal chaos exploded and tumbled. On the other side, the army of the demonic era, which had lost its military spirit and was a group of dragons without a leader, was finally annihilated after more than half a day of encirclement. In the end, not a single person escaped. All of them died in battle. It could be seen that although this wasn't the most elite army of the demonic era, it was still an iron-blooded army. But it was still useless. All of them were annihilated. Yi Shiwen stretched out his hand and crushed the flesh and blood of the demonic path era's army of more than 20 million. He refined them into medicinal pills that could increase cultivation and distributed them to the human race army. These medicinal pills were not very useful to him, but to the human race elites, it was enough to raise their cultivation by a small realm. As for the reinforcements from the satellite cities, everyone had a share. Yi Shiwen wasn't stingy. Immediately, these people were grateful to Yi Shiwen. The troops on the city wall who didn't attack were also envious. It was rare to encounter such a generous heavenly lord. At this time, Yi Shiwen could wholeheartedly observe the battle between Bian Xiaoye and the others. Among these three, Bian Xiaoye's strength was the weakest, but her progress was the fastest. After refining the mysterious good fortune pill, it was almost equivalent to gaining 100,000 years of power out of thin air. In a short period of time, it allowed her to reach the peak of the first realm. Thus, she had the qualifications to be on an equal footing with the masters of the two great devil era. She could fight against any one of them without falling into a disadvantageous position. Even if she were to face the two of them together, it would not be a problem for her. As for the other two, they were slightly slower. They had been emperors for many years and were stronger. However, they weren't as flexible. So, it was difficult for them to have such amazing changes like Bian Xiaoye. However, they managed to break through to the peak of their realm under the pressure of the enemy. The more these demonic era's experts fought with all their might, the more they wanted to break free. However, they became nutrients and stepping stones for the three's progress, allowing them to break through continuously. Chapter 34-36. The Wood Emperor was dumbfounded when he saw the cultivation of the three of them skyrocketing right before his eyes. He naturally understood that they must be digesting some kind of elixir. But even so, it wasn't easy for them to have their skills skyrocket under such pressure. This battle continued for another 10 days and 10 nights, but in this primal chaos chi was everywhere, so no one paid attention to the passage of time. They only felt that the battle was getting faster and more intense. Finally, the entire battlefield changed for the first time. Bian Xiaoye sent a Devil-era expert flying with a punch, then turned around and suppressed another Devil-era expert with the 6 paths of reincarnation. They were different from Bian Xiaoye, who had most of their cultivation sealed by Yi Shiwen. The more they fought, the weaker they became. Finally, they could not hold on any longer and were hit in the chest, spurting out a mouthful of blood. The laws released from his body were also crushed by Bian Xiaoye's martial Dao laws. This era was the martial Dao era, so all the laws related to martial Dao were the strongest. The laws of the other eras, no matter how strong they were, would be suppressed by the heavenly Dao. This was already far away from the depths of the Fortune God dynasty. If they were in the Fortune God dynasty, it was possible that a First Realm Emperor would be killed by a quasi-emperor. After the collapse of the laws, he suffered serious injuries and spurted out blood. Bian Xiaoye's attacks fell like a storm. Bian Xiaoye had matured at an astonishing speed after experiencing the fight with the Emperor. In fact, her speed was even faster than Yi Shiwen had imagined. She really had the ability to kill in one move. She killed the Devil Emperor of this Devil era in one move, turning him into a sky full of blood and instantly killing his spirit. Without a restraint, Bian Xiaoye's speed increased, and she directly rushed towards the Devil Emperor of another Devil era who had just reacted. She erupted with terrifying attack power, and a series of attacks directly stunned the Devil Emperor of the Devil era. He did not expect that after being shaken back for a while and being held back by Yi Shiwen's incarnation for a while, his companion had already been killed. But soon, he understood why his companions died so quickly. Bian Xiaoye, who had reached the peak of the First Realm, had also exploded to an unimaginable level. Without his companions restraining him, he was no match for Bian Xiaoye at all. He couldn't even restrain Bian Xiaoye slightly. After another series of attacks, he exploded on the spot and was also killed by Bian Xiaoye. After Bian Xiaoye, another half a day passed, and the second person to solve the problem was Ren Huang. After the mysterious creation pill had greatly increased his strength, his combat power could be compared to that of the veteran demon emperor from the Devil era, and it was even faintly stronger. Finally, he seized the opportunity to severely injure him and then kill him. Compared to the two of them, Thunderous Monarch's battle was undoubtedly much more difficult. How could it be easy for him to face two opponents of the same cultivation level? However, he gradually took the initiative. It took him another 10 days to seize the opportunity to severely injure an opponent and then kill him. However, at this time, he was also severely injured. In order to seize this opportunity, he paid a great price. Then, after a few more days, Thunderous Monarch finally recovered completely. He no longer fought with the opponent and killed the opponent with the Great Thunder technique. Although it took a lot of time, compared to the battle between emperors, especially with so many twists and turns, it was considered very short. These corpses were collected by them. They were all killed by themselves, so they had very high value. not to mention the resources and wealth of the ancient era that these devil emperors had. This was completely different from the Fortune God dynasty, and it also had a great role of enlightenment for them. After killing the opponents, Bian Xiaoye and the other two came to visit Yi Shiwen. Especially in this battle, their harvest was huge. Yi Shiwen sealed the opponents' cultivation, so they could temper themselves. The three almost unanimously expressed that as long as they were given a little more time, their breakthrough would only be a matter of time. In particular, Thunderous Monarch was already in the 8th realm. If he went one step further, he would be in the 9th realm. In that case, it could be said that he had truly touched the edge of the peak of the Emperor realm. He was only one step away from those real peak Emperor realm. At that time, he could truly become the pillar of the human race, alleviating the awkwardness of the human race not having a real peak Emperor realm. As for Bian Xiaoye, she could enter the 2nd realm, completely breaking away from the ranks of the weakest Emperor realm. Her human emperor also went one step further, almost touching the threshold of the high-level Emperor realm. All of them had great gains. After quelling the Devil Era's army, Yi Shiwen called Bian Xiaoye, the other two, and the Mu Emperor together and said, "Lead the army into the city." Previously, the Mu Emperor said that there are heavenly venerables of the devil race in this area. "I will go and search for them. Don't leave the city. Wait for me to come back," Yi Shiwen said. The heavenly venerables that the Mu Emperor had mentioned previously had always worried him. He decided to search for them personally. Naturally, he would not bring Bian Xiaoye and the others along. After all, a battle between heavenly venerables was not something they could casually intervene in. Even the Thunderous Monarch, who had the highest cultivation, could not withstand it. Yes, naturally, they did not dare to disobey Yi Shiwen's orders. They quickly led their troops and retreated into the satellite town. It was too dangerous to encounter heavenly venerables in such a chaotic place. Moreover, they really needed a place where they could cultivate in peace and have a breakthrough. After settling down, Yi Shiwen went straight into the chaos. With the support of the satellite town, even if they encountered heavenly venerables, they could still hold on for a while. After all, it was a satellite town built by the Fortune God dynasty. It was not just for show. It also had strong defensive capabilities. The first thing Yi Shiwen did was to rush to another satellite town. After confirming that it was indeed safe and that it had not been attacked, Yi Shiwen left. Although the Mu Emperor had mentioned it before, he still felt uneasy because he had not seen it with his own eyes. Apart from this satellite town, Yi Shiwen flew for half a day and arrived at another satellite town. It was also the last satellite town that he was responsible for. Sure enough, it had already been captured by the Devil Dao Era's army. Devil Qi soared into the sky, and the Devil Dao Era's devil race was flying in and out everywhere. This place had already been transformed into a lair by the Devil Dao Era's army. Yi Shiwen explored for a while and decided that he would first search for the Devil Dao Era's heavenly venerables. Then, he would lead the human race army to capture this satellite town. At this time, the defense of this satellite town had already been shattered when it was captured. The Devil Dao Era's people were rebuilding the defensive line of this satellite town with the array formations and barriers that they had obtained from their fortuitous encounters. Obviously, they hoped to stay here for a long time. After suppressing the idea of attacking, Yi Shiwen continued to search in the chaos. He cleaned up a few chaotic creatures and collected their bodies. These were all good things that were extremely rare in the Fortune God dynasty. Yi Shiwen even encountered many Emperor Realm creatures. They reached the Emperor Realm by relying on their instincts. However, they did not understand the Great Tao and could not live forever. After a period of time, they would die. Once they died in this chaos, even if their bodies could resist the corrosion of the primal chaos, they would gradually be corroded by the primal chaos. Suddenly, an unusual surge of primal chaos energy caught Yi Shiwen's attention while he was still searching in the primal chaos. Soon, Yi Shiwen followed the surging primal chaos energy and flew forward. He soon saw two silhouettes flying rapidly in the primal chaos. Their bodies were emitting rays of light that resembled sharp swords. They were cleaving the waves and cleaving the primal chaos. Two heavenly venerables! Yi Shiwen immediately recognized them. However, these two heavenly venerables were clearly not experts of the Fortune God dynasty. They had the characteristics of the ancient era. One of them had the strong characteristics of the Devil Dao era. It was the Devil Dao era's heavenly venerables. The other was a woman in a light yellow dress. Her skin was as white as snow, and her facial features were exquisite. Her eyes were like a pair of amber, breathtakingly beautiful. However, the woman was clearly injured. Her light yellow dress had long been stained with golden blood, and her face looked extremely pale. The Devil Dao era's heavenly venerables behind her was tall and burly. His body was covered in black scales, and he wore a suit of armor. He held a long, decapitated blade in his hand. Every step he took was like a thunderclap exploding in the chaos. His entire person was like a meteor as he chased after the woman. Although the woman's face was pale, her speed was not slow at all. She was constantly shifting and flashing, and with every flash, countless runes would appear beneath her feet to form a grand formation. In the blink of an eye, she would appear countless miles away. Fortunately, Yi Shiwen was also a heavenly venerables. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to keep up with the speed of these two people. He would have lost them in an instant. That Devil Dao era's heavenly venerables are most likely the Devil Dao era's heavenly venerables in this area. Could it be that he received some news and left in a hurry because of this woman? Yi Shiwen guessed in his heart. However, he didn't slow down. He stepped on a golden light that turned into a teleportation array. His figure moved horizontally as he chased after the woman. The three of them moved horizontally in the chaos, one in front and one behind. The yellow-robed woman's injuries seemed to have worsened, and her speed finally began to slow down. The Devil Dao era's heavenly venerables behind her couldn't help but burst into laughter when he saw this. He said, "Heavenly Talisman Immortal, hand over your Talisman Dao era's supreme ancestral symbol. Otherwise, you won't be able to escape death today." Supreme ancestral symbol? Behind them, Yi Shiwen couldn't help but be moved. Chapter 34-37. What is that? But it must be something good. Even the Demon King of the Demon Dao era is searching for it. How can it be something ordinary? Yi Shiwen immediately made a judgment in his heart. It must be a supreme treasure. Saint Concealing Demon Emperor. Heaven Talisman Immortal gritted his teeth. His pale face was flushed with anger. Would you dare to speak to me like this if I was at my peak? Ha ha ha, Heaven Talisman Immortal, if you were at your peak, I would naturally give in to you. But now, you don't even have 1/10 of your peak strength. The fact that you can still stand after being hit by that palm is proof of your outstanding strength. But so what? Saint Concealing Demon Emperor laughed loudly. He did not deny that there was indeed a huge gap between his strength and Heaven Talisman Immortal's at his peak. But that was only when Heaven Talisman Immortal was at his peak. Right now, she was just a stray dog. Heaven Talisman Immortal was angry and anxious. He said angrily, "Don't think you can get away with it, even if I die. I'd like to see how long you can persist. Now that the Talisman Dao era has been destroyed, all your persistence is meaningless. Why don't you join us? Our Demon Dao era is all-encompassing. No matter what era you are from, you can join us and get your rightful position. As long as you hand over the supreme ancestral symbol, you will be able to make a great contribution. Our Demon Dao era might even let your remaining Talisman Dao era go. It's not impossible for you to rebuild the Talisman Dao era. However, you must be a subsidiary of our Demon Dao era and serve for our Demon Dao era to unify the world. Saint Concealing Demon Emperor smiled slightly. He was not in a hurry. It seemed that Heaven Talisman Immortal would not be able to persist. However, he did not think that he would let her go as long as Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable handed over the supreme ancestral symbol. How could that be possible? The Devil Epic only wanted slaves. Subordinates? That was a joke. Moreover, he did not want to hand over the supreme ancestral symbol at all. As long as he obtained the supreme ancestral symbol, given time, he would become an eternal powerhouse that could move unhindered across the world. He would become one of the top existences in the Devil Epic. Wasn't that better than handing it over and receiving a small reward? Although Heaven Talisman Immortal Venerable didn't know what he was thinking, he knew how cunning the people of the Devil Dao era were. How could he agree? Moreover, the Devil Dao era had destroyed her Talisman Dao era. Her sect, her friends, and the foundation of her great Dao were all destroyed. Without the foundation of this era, she would never have the chance to further explore the great Dao in her life. The anger in her heart had already reached an unimaginable level. However, no matter what, she could not be considered to be at her peak. As she continued to circulate the power in her body, the palm that she had received became heavier and heavier. Very soon, it affected her speed, causing her to become slower and slower. The Saint Concealing Demon Emperor's speed was getting faster and faster. He kept stepping on laws. At this rate, it was only a matter of time before he caught up to her. Nothing could be more dangerous than encountering a peak Heavenly Venerable when she was seriously injured and had less than 10% of her strength left. This won't do, I can only fight him. Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable gritted her teeth. If she continued to chase like this, her strength would become weaker and her condition would worsen. She might as well turn around and fight him now. She might have a chance of winning. Suddenly, she heard a clear voice. Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable, let's make a deal. As long as you give me the supreme ancestral symbol, I'll help you get rid of this guy. Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable shuddered. Someone could actually talk to her. This meant that there was another Heavenly Venerable nearby. Just the Saint Concealing Demon Emperor alone was terrifying enough, not to mention that there was another one hiding. Did the heavens really want her dead? Who's talking? Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable's primordial spirit expanded. Who are you? With this interruption, Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable did not want to turn around and fight for the time being. The Saint Concealing Demon Emperor was getting closer and closer, so she started to feel anxious. It doesn't matter who I am. Just tell me if you agree or not. As long as you agree, I'll help you get rid of him. As for me, you don't have to worry about me. I'm on the same side as the Saint Concealing Demon Emperor. Otherwise, I can watch him kill you. You're injured, can you still run like this? The voice continued. It's fine if you don't agree. In any case, I can watch him kill you before killing him and obtaining the supreme ancestral symbol. Who are you? Come out. Suddenly, Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable stopped and shouted in all directions. This action of hers also gave the Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor a fright, because he was in the middle of a chase, and her shout made him think that there was another person. If that was the case, things would inevitably turn out to be complicated. However, he quickly calmed down and sneered at Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable. Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable, you don't have to play such trick. Do you think I'll believe you? The great Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable actually used such a despicable trick. If word gets out, it'll be a huge joke. Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable did not care about the Saint Concealing Demon Emperor's mockery. Her beautiful eyes stared at the chaos and opened her heavenly eye, as if trying to find the person. Come out, there's no point in hiding anymore. Didn't you say you'll help me kill this guy? Let me see. Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable said indifferently. What? Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor immediately became nervous, because looking at Heaven Talisman Immortal Venerable's expression, he definitely did not look like he was joking, because there was no point in deceiving him in this aspect. As long as she did not escape, she would still die. With her injuries, she would not be able to recover in such a short time, otherwise she would have already recovered. If there was really someone, then everything would change. Immediately, he shouted, "Which friend is here? Please show yourself. The Saint Concealing Demon Emperor of the demonic era is here. Please show yourself." Yi Shiwen, who was hiding in the chaos, knew that it was impossible for him to continue hiding. He sighed in his heart. Why is it so difficult to obtain the supreme ancestral symbol safely? I could eliminate the Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor and obtain the supreme ancestral symbol at the same time. It would be killing two birds with one stone. However, Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable was obviously not easy to deal with. She used this method to force him to fight with the Saint Concealing Demon Emperor behind him. She could fish in troubled waters. This woman was not simple at all. However, he did not care. The so-called conspiracy and tricks were only useful against those who were weak. He had absolute confidence. The Saint Concealing Demon Emperor was only at the peak of the third realm. His realm was similar to Yi Shiwen's. However, in terms of combat power, Yi Shiwen was confident that he was invincible in the same realm. Although Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable did not know her true realm, he knew that she was not even 1/10 of her peak. Otherwise, she would not be forced to this extent by the Saint Concealing Demon Emperor. Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable, what I said just now is still valid. Yi Shiwen's figure slowly emerged. Seeing his appearance, Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable heaved a sigh of relief. She tried her best to force him to come out and fight with the Saint Concealing Demon Emperor. Yi Shiwen's stealth technique was very brilliant. If he was determined not to come out, there was nothing she could do. Fortunately, the other party seemed to be very confident in his strength, so she succeeded. On the other hand, the Sacred Hidden Demon Emperor's pair of demon eyes widened. He was just giving it a try just now. Yi Shiwen's invisibility technique was very effective. In fact, he didn't even notice the slightest problem. He was just testing it out of habit. He didn't expect that one of them would really explode. After sensing Yi Shiwen's aura, the Saint Concealing Demon Emperor immediately became vigilant. An expert from the martial epoch. Encountering an expert from the martial epoch was not as troublesome as encountering an expert from the ancient era. This was their era. Naturally, they were favored by the heavenly law and were more difficult to deal with. When he heard Yi Shiwen's words, the anger in his heart suddenly rose. He was very afraid of Yi Shiwen, who suddenly appeared, but it did not mean that he was afraid. He was very clear about what the supreme ancestral symbol represented. He could not back down. Yi Shiwen did not look at the Saint Concealing Demon Emperor at all. He looked directly at Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable and said, "Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable, you wanted to lure me out. Now that I'm out, I'll ask you again. Do you want to hand over the supreme ancestral symbol? I'll help you kill this Saint Concealing Demon Emperor. Otherwise, I'll kill both of you. You know the Fortune God Dynasty's attitude towards the ancient era. Killing one is a great merit, let alone killing two. Moreover, there is a great expert like you. I don't mind killing one more." Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable could feel that although Yi Shiwen's words were indifferent, the will in his words could not be disobeyed. If she did not hand over the supreme ancestral symbol, her life might really be in danger. She could not help but feel extremely sullen in her heart. When she thought about the destruction of the Talisman epoch, she felt sorrow in her heart and her eyes turned red. Suddenly she said, "Okay, you help me kill him first. At the same time, promise me something else. As long as you agree, I'll give you the supreme ancestral symbol." Otherwise, I won't let you have the opportunity to take advantage of me even if I have to self-destruct. Good, straightforward. A gentleman's word is as good as a whip. I'll eliminate this hindrance first. Yi Shiwen finally looked at the saint-concealing demon emperor. At this moment, the saint-concealing demon emperor had no value to exist anymore. It was a good time to kill him to eliminate future troubles. Chapter 34-38. You're from the martial epoch. The sacred concealment demon emperor glared at Yi Shiwen with a cold look in his eyes. Yi Shiwen's words had thoroughly infuriated him. The black scales on his body exuded a brilliant light like a galaxy. His eyes were cold like the edge of a blade. He waved the long blade in his hand slightly. It seemed ordinary, but it directly cut through the universe. A long river of blade Tao was slashed horizontally. It was as long as a galaxy, and it instantly slashed in front of Yi Shiwen. It's just an insignificant skill. Yi Shiwen stood in the chaos like an old tree with its roots deeply rooted in the ground. Then, he clenched his fist and drew out the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation in the void. Compared to Bian Xiaoye's 6 paths of reincarnation fist, Yi Shiwen's 6 paths of reincarnation fist was more than 100 times more exquisite and powerful. Boom! Yi Shiwen's fist directly hit the long saber, and the collision immediately produced the most dazzling brilliance. These brilliance directly tore apart the chaos. Heaven and earth exploded, and the entire chaos violently shook. Even in the vast and boundless chaos, it was difficult to withstand such an attack. This kind of matchless divine power shocked everyone. Although there were no other spectators, the creatures of the chaos had already felt this power. Many of them immediately swam away after sensing this power. Most of them were still trembling on the spot as if the heavens were angry. This was the battle between heavenly lords. Any random battle could be carved into the history books and become a legend. How dare you say that it's an insignificant skill of mine? The demonic sage concealment demon emperor attacked again, and the long blade in his hand burst out with endless light. Every blade turned into a shocking blade light, which turned into a silver river that blotted out the sky and pressed down. This kind of heaven-defying means was indeed frightening. In fact, it was even more terrifying than the Fortune Divine Dynasty's experts of the same realm. Although they might be in the same realm, compared to the terrifying experts who had experienced the Great Apocalypse, their cultivation years were still far from enough. This blade could split open a universe. It was simply too terrifying. Yi Shiwen stood still. The sacred concealment demon emperor was indeed terrifying. It was almost too difficult to kill him in the same realm. However, he was not worried at all. The saber radiance came down, and everything around him was destroyed. It was originally chaos, but it evolved into a world and then returned to chaos. The profound meaning of life and death emerged continuously, and the aura overflowed. One could imagine how terrifying the collision between the two would be. However, he still blasted out a simple punch. In an instant, he felt that the world had stagnated. Even in the chaos, he could still sense the stagnation of the entire world. Especially, Yi Shiwen's beautiful eyes suddenly opened wide as he stared at Yi Shiwen's body. It was the flow of time, and it felt like it was flowing everywhere. He had a feeling that his understanding of time law had reached such a level that it could affect the chaos. There was everything in the chaos, but there was nothing at the same time. Therefore, it was almost impossible to affect the time in such a situation. The sacred concealment demon emperor's saber was also very terrifying. He had already comprehended this Tao to an extremely profound level. Therefore, when he unleashed it, it was like thousands of waterfalls had transformed into a galaxy and suddenly fell down, destroying the world. However, everything came to a standstill. It was as if the entire timeline had come to a complete standstill in front of this punch. Wherever this punch passed, the streams of saber aura that were like galaxies would explode one after another. They were not a match for it at all. Rumble! Endless waves of explosions swept out in all directions in the chaos. Everywhere they passed, even the chaos was annihilated and turned into nothingness. It was too terrifying. 2 consecutive sabers couldn't do anything to the opponent at all. This also let the Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor roughly know that this guy in front of him was indeed not someone to be trifled with. However, he didn't really take it to heart because he was also very strong. He swung the decapitated saber in his hand, crushing the chaos, and let out an unusually terrifying whistling sound. He directly slashed at Yi Shiwen's face indifferently and ruthlessly. He was obviously extremely conceited. The decapitated saber in his hand could kill any strong enemy. Its divine might was invincible. Once it was unleashed, it would be a big move. However, Yi Shiwen, who was in front of him, didn't have the slightest bit of retreat. He also smashed his fist. All of his martial Tao was integrated into his fist technique. In one punch, there were thousands of secret techniques and thousands of Tao. It was extremely terrifying and powerful. He also walked the path of big moves. Both of their fighting styles were similar, and they directly collided on the spot. Boom! 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 In the blink of an eye, both sides had exchanged tens of thousands of moves. Heaven Talisman Immortal, who was standing at the side, widened her beautiful watery eyes. She felt stifled in her heart. Yi Shiwen didn't look like he was boasting. She could see that he and the Devil Dao era's Sage Concealment Demon Emperor, who had experienced the Great Apocalypse, were evenly matched. Perhaps it would be difficult to find a match for him in the Fortune God dynasty. For the first time, she began to consider the feasibility of the plan in her heart. Finally, the two sides who were entangled in battle separated. They represented two completely different great Daos. One was the magic of the demonic epoch, and the other was the martial arts of the martial epoch. They were different in the end. The more Yi Shiwen fought, the more he understood that the next time he met the experts of the demonic epoch, he wouldn't be flustered. He would also be able to burst out with his full strength. Compared to the people from the Fortune God dynasty, the Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor and the Heavenly Talisman Immortal clearly had rich experience in fighting with the experts of the martial epoch. They didn't need to consider this aspect. Hearing Yi Shiwen's words, the Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor attacked again. He held the headless saber with both hands, and clanging sounds rang out. In an instant, he sent out thousands of saber lights, and endless scarlet saber aura spread out, drowning the primal chaos. This was a fatal blow. After the Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor fell into the demonic path, his strength increased by more than a little. He knew that Yi Shiwen absolutely couldn't block this attack. However, an even more shocking scene happened. The thousands of saber lights that he had slashed down all fell on Yi Shiwen's body, issuing a series of metallic clanging sounds. In an instant, all the saber lights bounced back. Before the destructive power contained in the saber could burst out, he was sent flying. Yi Shiwen's entire body emitted a golden light. He was like the only true god walking in the primal chaos, able to split heaven and earth. These attacks couldn't break through his indestructible true god. Die! In the endless saber lights, the true body of the Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor's headless saber was contained. It cut through everything and slashed at Yi Shiwen's face. At this critical moment, Yi Shiwen suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed the headless saber in his hand, preventing the Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor from advancing any further. What? The Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor's eyes widened. His rationality regained the upper hand. The attack that he had been preparing for a long time couldn't break through Yi Shiwen's defense at all. This made him suddenly wake up. In front of him, the golden divine radiance on Yi Shiwen's body became more and more dazzling, illuminating everything around him. In the end, a terrifying power converged and turned into an attack that struck the Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor's body. The Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor immediately vomited a mouthful of golden blood, and his entire body was sent flying. Chapter 34-39. The Sacred Concealing Demon Emperor was hit by the attack, and his strong body was sent flying like a meteor. The power of this attack was truly terrifying. He first spat out a mouthful of blood, and he spat out many more mouthfuls of blood as he was sent flying. He felt like his body was about to explode, and he was seeing stars. How is this possible? How can his cultivation be so much stronger than mine? The Sacred Concealing Demon Emperor was also in disbelief. He had experienced the Great Apocalypse, and no one in the entire martial epoch could compare to him in terms of cultivation time. Although the current cultivation time and level of power could not be completely proportional, it would not be wrong in the same realm. However, this law was completely lost on Yi Shiwen. His strength was not just powerful, it was simply terrifying. He did not know that Yi Shiwen's body was already different from ordinary people after the transformation of the World Tree Fruit. His cultivation was even more profound and terrifying. When he just entered the Third Realm, he was already comparable to the peak Third Realm. When he entered the peak Third Realm, he would be invincible. Not only the Sacred Concealing Demon Emperor, but the Heaven Talisman Immortal Venerable who was watching from the side was also dumbfounded. Yi Shiwen's performance was also completely beyond her expectations. She had never seen such a powerful Third Realm Heavenly Venerable in her life. The Sacred Concealing Demon Emperor had already surpassed the peak Third Realm, and this was the limit of the limit. After the attack succeeded, Yi Shiwen did not let him escape. Almost instantly, he chased after him again. He suddenly stepped out of the array and instantly arrived in front of the Sacred Concealing Demon Emperor. The Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor roared out as he struggled to escape. However, it was futile as he immediately felt an immense pressure crushing him. He could not break free at all. In the face of this crushing pressure, his magic power, and his laws could not be used at all. Yi Shiwen's next attack fell almost instantaneously, and blasted into his chest. Boom! The Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor let out a blood-curdling scream. Almost instantly, his physical body was torn into pieces and scattered into the chaos. This time, he no longer doubted Yi Shiwen's determination and strength to kill him. His body, which had been smashed into pieces, quickly gathered together and fled into the distance. How could Yi Shiwen do as he wished? He clenched his fist on the spot and ruthlessly bombarded it. Bang! The Saint Concealment Demon Emperor, who had just reassembled his physical body, was smashed into pieces on the spot. This time, his primordial spirit was even weaker. He directly ignited his flesh and blood to cast a terrifying magic. Under the protection of this magic, his primordial spirit left his physical body and fled into the distance. Die, Yi Shiwen said coldly. A longbow appeared in his hand out of nowhere. The longbow was condensed from energy. The law arrow automatically took shape and then suddenly shot out. Boom! In the distance, the primordial spirit of the Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor let out a blood-curdling screech. It was completely annihilated by the arrow. After killing the Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor, Yi Shiwen quickly collected his physical body. He sacrificed it to the World Tree to catalyze the fruit of the World Tree. At the same time, he walked towards the Heaven Talisman Immortal and said, "Can you hand over the supreme ancestral symbol now?" Facing Yi Shiwen, who came with the momentum of a great victory, the Heaven Talisman Immortal did not play any trick. From the battle just now, he had thoroughly understood that with Yi Shiwen's strength, it was really effortless to kill her. After all, she was not at the peak. The Heaven Talisman Immortal nodded slightly and then flipped his hand. A talisman appeared. It was jade in color and almost transparent. There were many ancient law traces that Yi Shiwen could not understand carved on it. It was extremely mysterious. Yi Shiwen could even feel the terrifying power that far surpassed the heavenly master level contained in it. He immediately confirmed that the Heaven Talisman Immortal did not lie to him. "This is the supreme ancestral symbol?" Yi Shiwen asked. "Yes, this is the foundation of our Talisman Dao era. The supreme ancestral symbol is also the foundation that maintains our Talisman Dao era. If it wasn't for the invasion of the Devil Dao era, I would not have fled with it in such a hurry," said the Heaven Talisman Immortal. "This is the world that maintained an era?" Yi Shiwen was secretly surprised because he also knew that it was impossible for those ancient eras to live in the primal chaos directly. They didn't form a city to protect themselves. Instead, they had their own world. They were chosen from the broken world when they were still the main characters of the world in the past. They had experienced the great calamity. In these broken worlds, the old way was still operating. Therefore, it was also their foundation. Once it was broken, the consequences would be unimaginable. The entire era's civilization would be destroyed. Even if someone could escape, it would be useless. When it was really the turn of the world to experience another great calamity, who could protect them? In the primal chaos, without the protection of a small world, how could they escape from the great calamity? It was simply impossible. Therefore, it was easy to imagine how important this small world was to the entire era. This supreme ancestral symbol was actually maintaining the operation of a small world. One could imagine how magical it was. Yes, it was born from the body of our talisman ancestor. All these years, we have been relying on it to maintain the operation of the Talisman Dao era. However, I did not expect that it would be destroyed by the Devil Dao era in the end. The Heaven Talisman Immortal revealed a deep-seated hatred on his face. Talisman Ancestor? He should be very powerful. A bright light flashed in Yi Shiwen's eyes. One Dao Ancestor. Perhaps the extent of his power was unimaginable. Of course, the Talisman Ancestor is powerful. Let me put it this way. He is on the same level as the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch of your Martial Dao era, said the Heaven Talisman Immortal. There is actually someone on the same level as the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch? Yi Shiwen could not help but exclaim in shock. What kind of existence was the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch? He was recognized as the #1 expert in the Fortune God dynasty since ancient times. No one dared to say that they could stand shoulder to shoulder with the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch. Whether it was the arrogant Heavenly Venerables of the Fortune God dynasty or the unruly Heavenly Venerables of the foreign domains, all of them had to lower their proud heads in front of this name. You should be a newcomer who has just been promoted to the Heavenly Venerables not long ago, asked the Heaven Talisman Immortal suddenly. Yi Shiwen nodded and did not think much of it. He naturally knew that if there was something he did not understand, he should not be ashamed to ask. Only by always being humble and eager to learn could he always maintain the motivation to move forward. That's right. That's why you don't know about the existence of the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch. This level of existence is like a pillar in every epoch, but not every epoch can give birth to such a level of expert. Nothing will be left after the Great Cataclysm if an epoch cannot give birth to such a level of expert. In fact, many civilizations have just developed to the peak, and the protection of the heavenly Tao weakened for them. Then, the ancient epoch would rush in and destroy their civilizations. The only difference is the level of expert, said the Heaven Talisman Immortal. Your epoch is very lucky to have such a heaven-gifted genius like the Fortune Creation Heavenly Monarch. When your civilization had just started to develop, he had already reached an unprecedented level. Later, he came to the depths of the primal chaos and built the current martial epoch's defensive line to ensure the peace of your epoch, including the countless worlds attached to your epoch. Otherwise, do you think that your defensive line would have been built here? It should have been fought with countless ancient epics. Finally, the epic that can stand out in an extremely tragic war and produce that level of expert will be able to survive in the end. Those that can't be born will be destroyed. Survival or destruction will be in the hands of one person. Yi Shiwen was surprised. He had heard that some ancient epics had been destroyed by people in the past. However, he did not know that it involved the struggle of experts like the fortune creation heavenly monarch. Whether an epic civilization would prosper or be destroyed depended on the existence of that level of expert. However, this made Yi Shiwen even more envious. The symbol ancestor was such a powerful person. The supreme ancestral symbol that he left behind was naturally extremely precious. But if your epic had such a powerful person, how could it be conquered? Yi Shiwen asked. The heavenly talisman immortal smiled bitterly and said, the symbol ancestor had already disappeared long before the last great apocalypse. Without the protection of the symbol ancestor, our talisman epic suffered heavy losses in the last great apocalypse. If it wasn't for the supreme ancestral symbol, I'm afraid it would have been destroyed long ago. However, it did not last until now and was finally destroyed by the demon epic. But you are willing to give such an important thing to me? Yi Shiwen suddenly revealed a playful smile. Earlier, you said that if I want to obtain the supreme ancestral symbol, I have to agree to your conditions. Tell me, what are your conditions? Then there is only one. I want you to help me destroy the demon epic, said the heavenly talisman immortal. What? Destroy the demon epic? Are you messing with me? Do you think I can destroy the demon epic with my strength? Yi Shiwen's complexion suddenly turned cold. He felt that this woman was playing with him. Although he was conceited, he wasn't conceited to the point that he could destroy the devil era with his own strength, which had shaken many eras. Don't worry, I am not that naive. I don't think you can destroy it now. With the help of the supreme ancestral symbol, your cultivation speed will definitely not be slow. Sooner or later, you will become an earth-shattering existence. It is not impossible for you to reach the level of the fortune creation heavenly monarch and the symbol ancestor. When that time comes, I want you to help me destroy the demon epic and avenge my talisman epic, said the heavenly talisman immortal in an extremely serious tone. Chapter 3440. As a terrifying expert who had experienced the great apocalypse, Heaven Talisman Immortal was naturally not a fool. She had not been stimulated by hatred to the point of losing her mind. Asking Yi Shiwen to take revenge now was undoubtedly like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. It was simply impossible to succeed. If I really reach that realm, I can fulfill your wish. But since the supreme ancestral symbol is so powerful, why don't you use it yourself? Yi Shiwen was still very puzzled. For Yi Shiwen, there were naturally many benefits to destroying the demonic epic. Not to mention removing the threat that the demonic epic posed to the martial epic, there were countless other benefits. He did not want to go against his original goal, which was why he finally agreed. Do you think anyone will really let me go if I have the supreme ancestral symbol? Where can I run to? Even if I can wander in the primal chaos for countless years, I'll still die once the great apocalypse arrives. What's the use of that? Besides, without the manpower and resources of an era to support me, the supreme ancestral symbol won't be of much use to me. I'm sure you know the requirements for cultivation. Heaven Talisman Immortal smiled bitterly. If it was possible, she would be willing to hand over the supreme ancestral symbol. She didn't choose to escape when Yi Shiwen was fighting against the sacred hidden demon emperor. Instead, she chose to stay. She wanted to take a gamble. If she continued to wander like this, she would really die when the great apocalypse arrived. If she relied on a powerful force, she would also have to hand over the supreme ancestral symbol. She would be helpless, let alone put forward any conditions. It was simply impossible. This was the reason why she finally chose to cooperate with Yi Shiwen. Of course, Yi Shiwen did not directly choose to rob her at the beginning. He still gave her some leeway, which also made her have a good impression on Yi Shiwen. How about this? I know you still have doubts in your heart. I swear to God that I will not do anything harmful to you in this life. But what is your name? You haven't introduced yourself. Heaven Talisman Immortal looked at Yi Shiwen and asked. Her expression was very serious. This kind of oath was made to the heavenly way. The more powerful the expert, the more difficult it was to make an oath easily. Because the heavenly way would catch it. If she could not fulfill it or violate the oath, she would suffer the wrath of heaven. Once she made such an oath, only Yi Shiwen could bully her from now on. There was no possibility for her to harm Yi Shiwen. This was the only way to gain Yi Shiwen's trust. My name is Wu Zun, and I come from the Fortune God Dynasty's eastern region. Yi Shiwen finally opened his mouth and said, You are a martial eminence? Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable was a little surprised, as if he had thought of something. Then, he closed his eyes and began to vow, I, Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable, swear that from now on, I will never do anything detrimental to martial venerables. If I violate this vow, I am willing to die without a burial. Within the primal chaos, a clap of thunder suddenly rang out. This was the acknowledgement of the heavenly Daos to this oath. If she violated the oath, the heavenly Daos would naturally come to deal with her. After listening to her swearing, Yi Shiwen said aloud, Why, you were surprised to hear my name just now, have you heard it before? She had noticed a flash of astonishment on Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable's face. Something must have happened, otherwise it would not have been like this. Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable thought for a moment, and a strange smile appeared on his face. He looked at Yi Shiwen and said, I have indeed heard of it before. In fact, although I was seriously injured, I still managed to escape from the destroyed Talisman Dao era. Later, in order to gather information, I sneaked into the cities occupied by the Demon Dao era and heard a lot of news. Later, I was discovered by the Sacred Concealment Demon Emperor and was hunted down by him. Among them, there was news about you. No, I have just arrived at the era's battlefield, and I am not famous. How did the people of the Demon Dao era know about me? Could it be that someone in the Fortune God Dynasty leaked the news? Yi Shiwen could not help but squint his eyes, and a stern look flashed in his eyes. Smart, it is indeed the people of your martial Dao era who spread the news. It is the famous city lord of Moon City, one of the 10 great cities of your martial Dao era. Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable nodded slightly and said, It is really him. Yi Shiwen squinted his eyes. Of the 2 possible names he had guessed, the most likely one was the City Lord of Moon City. According to what he knew, the City Lord of Moon City was unscrupulous and lawless. It was possible that he would do something disadvantageous to Yi Shiwen. No, it should be said that he would definitely think of a way to deal with Yi Shiwen. However, Yi Shiwen had never imagined that the City Lord of Moon City would let the people of the Demon Dao era make a move. Could it be that he is colluding with the Demon Dao era? Yi Shiwen's eyes flashed with a sharp light. You are a complete newcomer and don't understand. Although the martial Dao era and the other ancient epochs are enemies, it does not mean that the heavenly venerates under them are mortal enemies with everyone on the other side. For example, you and I should be irreconcilable enemies. However, in reality, that is not the case. The City Lord of Moon City has been in charge of Moon City for so many years. His foundation is already deeply rooted. His connections are also spread across the various ancient epochs. Although we are not friends of life and death, as long as he releases a portion of the benefits, there will naturally be people who will help him deal with the strong enemies. Heavenly Talisman Immortal Venerable said, Do you think the various ancient epochs are very peaceful? They also have opponents that they need to deal with. In fact, they even have opponents that they need to fight to the death. However, they do not take action themselves. At this time, they will secretly let the people of your martial Tao era make a move. In any case, your martial Tao era has a clear attitude towards the ancient epics on the surface. In reality, this kind of cooperation is very common. The major characters of your martial Tao era have experts from the other ancient epics who have come to join them. Experts who have come to join them? Yi Shiwen suddenly remembered the mysterious and unfathomable Mr. Huang beside the Eastern Heavenly Venerate. He was a great expert whose origin was unknown. He never made a move, nor did he speak. He only followed the Eastern Heavenly Venerate. Could it be that he was also a top expert from another era? I remember that the experts of the ancient epics will be suppressed by the heavenly way of this era, right? Yi Shiwen could not help but ask. Yes, they will definitely be suppressed by the heavenly way of this era. However, there are ways to avoid it. It's just that they will have to pay a high price and consume a lot of wealth and resources. It just depends on whether someone is willing to do it for them, said the Heaven Talisman Immortal. This is also a very important matter. Therefore, not everyone can join the ancient epics. After joining them, there are naturally many benefits. They will not be suppressed by the ancient epics. They can enter the Fortune Divine Dynasty and cultivate in seclusion. They can also enjoy many resources that can only be produced in the ancient epics and comprehend a completely different great way. Because of this, many people are willing to join them. Although they also know that all the benefits will only be available before the great calamity, it is still better than nothing. I see. Yi Shiwen nodded. It was the same for Senior Heavenly Talisman Immortal. She used to be high and mighty in the Talisman era. Her words carried enormous weight, and no one dared to disobey her. However, it didn't make any sense now that the Talisman era had been destroyed. Apart from the current era like the martial era, which era had extra resources to support such a top master. Only the Fortune God dynasty could do so. Therefore, she had very few choices. In fact, she did not even have much leeway to choose. It was almost a certainty. But what kind of expert did the Moon City Lord hire to kill me? Asked Yi Shiwen. The Moon City Lord knows that you are a third realm expert. Therefore, he secretly hired a fourth realm expert from the Devil Dao era to kill you. You are definitely not a match for him. Moreover, he has already given you information and your location. Apart from the fourth realm expert from the Devil Dao era, there may be other people coming to kill you. When that time comes, you will not be able to call for help, said the Heaven Talisman Immortal. As part of the price, the City Lord of Moonlight City has promised to hand over the 2 satellite cities you're responsible for defending to them for slaughter and plunder. The City Lord of Moonlight City will do his best to stall them and not let them act. Good job, Moon City Lord, said Yi Shiwen. The Moon City Lord was really ruthless. He knew that Yi Shiwen was only in the third realm, but he actually sent a fourth realm expert. He really wanted Yi Shiwen's life. Moreover, he did not hesitate to sell the information of the area that Yi Shiwen was in charge of. He even sent countless creatures in the 2 satellite cities to be slaughtered by the Devil Dao era expert. He was extremely vicious. The killing intent in Yi Shiwen's heart intensified. It was not only because of the Yin Yang and the Unity Emperor, but also because the Moon City Lord did not have a bottom line. Yi Shiwen originally thought that he would cooperate with the Moon City Lord under the condition that he did not lose his bottom line. Now, it seemed that this was not the case at all. The bottom line that Yi Shiwen thought was not even worth mentioning to the Moon City Lord. The Moon City Lord could easily cross over it. No wonder the Eastern Heavenly Venerate and the others did not denounce the Moon City Lord on the spot for fear of harming the innocent. It was because the Moon City Lord and the others knew that when the Moon City Lord was forced into a corner, he would really do anything. However, it was precisely because of this that he was even more repulsive. The Eastern heavenly sovereign's warning to him to be careful was definitely not an empty threat. It was because I accidentally stumbled upon their plot that my whereabouts were exposed and I was hunted down, Senior Immortal Heavenly Talisman said, looking at Yi Shiwen. You'd better be prepared. Don't lose to them in the end. If even the supreme ancestral symbol ends up in their hands, I'll still need you to help me take revenge and destroy the demonic epic. Don't worry, I'm confident that they won't be able to return this time. Yi Shiwen clenched his fists and a fierce look flashed in his eyes. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.